Okay, we'll call the Government Aspirations meeting to order. She's waiting to see if you guys are ready. So the first order of business is to accept the minutes from the December 2022 meeting. Moved by Dave, seconded by Tim. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. So the first thing we have on our agenda is UTEP discussion. I'd like to welcome Juan Gonzalez and Ginny Sullivan, who were able to attend the meeting. Mary King was unable to attend today. So they are representatives for the IDA board, the Washington County. And I don't know.
This is Chuck Martin.
Chuck Barton.
So just to know, Mary King is going to
She is able to hear us. Dave has contacted me and he is asked to be able to speak first when we open the UTEP conversation. So you have the floor, Dave.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that since the start of this process, we were looking at making the UTEP meet legal and other changes in economic environment changed dramatically since 1999, I think was the last one we did. I want to reinstate the process. The process is we have extended the comment period to March 1st. The comment period is not when the comment period is not when we're going to adopt the new step. We will still have a process of going through all the comments. Looking at the comments, I committed to have a meeting to go over the comments so people understand where we're at, what the differences are, what we're looking for. And I think in some cases there may need to be explanations of why that certain things are in the UTEP, so people understand that. So that's our commitment. So I would say probably before we get any type of decision in adopting any UTEP, we'll probably begin July or August before we get to that point, because you've got a corporation writing legal checks to make. So I just want to make that sure. I will say that we have received some good written comments. There is a benefit of looking at this because we're going to look at the comments from other people's eyes. I mean, I've read the probably at least 100 times, if not more. And sometimes in this perspective, Dana's got some good comments that he put forth that we didn't see those, and quite frankly, the attorney didn't see it when they mentioned it. I think the process we've gotten some good written comments to look at, some very constructive comments, and we want to thank everyone. And this is why we're looking at it. And before we adopt UTEP, as I said, we're going to have a meeting to go over what we're doing, but that won't be probably won't be in April, probably in May before we get to that point. As I said, just collecting everything, putting together. We were responsive to some comments we got. And as probably people know, that we did adopt a resolution committee to keep the what's almost known as the opt-out clause. That's not really the meeting that we thought that the meeting. So we did pass that at our January 17th meeting. So I think I was still, I think Stacy or Stan put it out to the entire group. So I just want to make that known. And you know, we're not trying to make this a confrontational process. We're trying to make a working together process to make sure we're coming to what works best for the county, the town, and all the scholars. And driving economic development is very important, especially for this area. Thank you, guys.
Matt?
Well, can I comment on something Dave said?
Yes.
So Dave, on that resolution 17, from a wordsmith standpoint, it talks about approval of certain municipalities which the proposed projects to be located. I know there's appendix in there of how to opt it out. That just seems really vague in general. If you're going to have certain municipalities, they usually be listed here, or there should be a reference in here to a appendix or list someplace else. Because if I'm a solar company and I see this, then I'm not going to have any idea which certain ones you're talking about. You know what I mean?
Well, then it refers to UTEP. It's in UTEP. It's not in this. UTEP is governing.
Okay, so the UTEP has that list.
Yes.
I'm just saying that you made it an extra step or two if you're gonna make the resolution, it should be a little clearer that it would be kind of cool if you listed them all in here, but be that as it may.
Good point, but it's gonna be in UTEP anyway.
Okay.
That was gonna be it.
Dave, it gets very confusing when you say opt-out. Which opt-out? All pilots, which is appendix N, or 487 towns, which is only solar, wind, and farm waste to energy. So I think when you talk about the opt-out list, we get confused as to which list you're talking about.
You want to call it appendix N this way.
Well, what will you call it? Because in your resolution, you say certain towns, and you read the rest, you have no idea what the certain towns are. Are you gonna reference certain towns and then say reference,
In the UTEP will.
you will reference it to a certain title, appendix N or something?
Appendix A will.
Okay.
It won't be in, I can guarantee it won't be in, if the A is B is
Okay, but in the UTEP, it will refer you to a certain list that you can try to then go find.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Dave, I'm hoping you can answer this. Why did some towns choose not to be on the list rather than all the towns? Was there an advantage not to be on the list to be on the opt-out? Or just, because after what we're saying, wouldn't it be cleaner every town?
What's your, are you referring to the solar or to the appendix N?
Well, either one. I mean, what,
Well, I think
if you answer one, why don't you answer the other one?
the problem with appendix N is it's not actually an opt-out, it's an actual process the town has to go through.
Local law.
Yeah, they have to actually go through the process and they have to look at that and decide what they're gonna do.
487, not appendix N. You gotta keep the two different.
Right, appendix N, you have to go through and look at, you know, there's a performance the town has to do, whether they want to approve, not approve something. So I'm just guessing, because I wasn't there in 1999 when they did it, I assume that's from the trash plant, but I gotta believe there were certain towns that don't want to go through that. And there's other towns that do. I assume that's what it's all about.
Dana,
Was 1999 when the first pilot came through?
No.
You referenced the trash plant. Was it so controversial that the IDA said, okay, if you don't want to allow any pilots, create
So it
a
wasn't there, so I can only speculate. 1972 was the creation of the academy, then was what, 850, or actually 896. That is, the IDA, and that is in perpetuity in that language. But anyhow, I don't know what happened. I can only suspect that there was issues with the trash plant. And that's why people requested outcome. That's the only thing I can speculate on.
thing. It has nothing to do with the threat of eminent domain to take land in Hartford for the ash landfill. You already owned it at that point.
Yeah, by 99 we did. I got here in 96.
I didn't
Yeah.
know that. I didn't know that.
Dana,
Can I, no,
Keep
you
on
ready for
going.
me? No, I'm ready to start something.
anybody else
We're
want
not,
anything?
we'll never
before
be ready for you. Bring it on.
We appreciate your hard work on this, Dana, go for it.
I'm sorry, I'm getting way into the weeds on this, but I think somebody has to. I probably got 3 minutes of handouts to do. I tried to collate it this morning, but I should have come to an hour earlier. I apologize for that. So I'm gonna hand out things in chronological order, if that's okay. We'll pass these around, everybody here, we'll pass these around, everyone back there. So the first one I'm passing out, these are my ideas. Pass these out. First one I handed out are, these are my ideas on how the use of
Yeah.
Pass these out again. So the next one is the 1972 creation of the IDA, specifically where it says that the members serve at the pleasure of the board of supervisors. Next is this appendix N that we're referring to. Appendix N requires the IDA to get approval from the towns on any pilot. It could be manufacturing, hotels, solar, warehousing, any pilot. Next one. I don't think you're gonna do this on one.
Nobody's.
Yeah. Well, continue. The next one is where I say we shouldn't just refer to opt out, because opt out, we talk about 487, real property tax law, or appendix N. So this is 487. This lists the towns, Washington County, that by local law said they're not offering exemptions in the town on 487 with the solar.
Yeah, this is
Are
first hand count.
Which one do you need?
This one.
you 487?
Didn't get any of them. You didn't get any of them, so.
Okay.
Well, I didn't have any more of the appendix N, but here's money, just the first thing.
Get that memorized.
We are. Dana's one ahead of time.
This next one,
Right.
IDA resolution from 2018, where the IDA says that there's a solar project. There's a solar project coming in, the IDA, they're not going to get involved. The IDA will send any solar projects to the town.
No, we just.
And when we talk about 487, this is that one last one I handed out, the IDA said they're not going to get involved in 487, they're going to turn it back to the town. They have since changed their policy without informing anybody that they're going to do that. Right. Next are minutes, IDA minutes from November 15th, 2021, where they're talking about changing their policy on the 487.
Last one.
Yeah, I got it. Going for it. This next one is minutes from IDA December 20th, 2021, where they talk about changing their policy on renewable energy. It's funny because they've changed the name. It used to be on solar. Now they're calling it renewable. So if they rescind an old policy, they're not referring to solar. They need to call them the same thing. Otherwise it gets too confusing.
You can skip the interview, yes. You're getting your stuff in now.
This next one is a recent resolution from the IDA, January 17th, 2023. And this is one probably they refer to certain towns, appendix N, where in their UTEP, they're going to put back in that appendix N towns will be honored. And appendix N is no pilot in the town.
Thanks,
This next one is a draft from the IDA of October 2022, and I think they formalized this in November. And this is where they also talk about solar. Then if I can refer to these, if I can keep going, Cassie.
Yes. You can bring them from there, here for a minute, so you can face everybody.
I can do whatever.
Whichever works for you, because I know you keep turning just if you have no. That work for you?
Yeah. I voice very
Keep that for now. Don't get excited.
Okay,
Thank you.
keep going, Sandy. You can go.
Oh, there's one more.
This is the current UTEP policy, 1999.
Eli.
So this is what probably you're gonna refer to the most. As we compare the current UTEP with the old UTEP, where currently the proposed. This is the proposed UTEP.
We're gonna offer Dana a pilot, seems like he put a logging company, hired at least 10 people. No, it's just the county.
No, it's the one.
There you
All right, if everyone wants to refer to the very first paper I handed out on the very top since January 24th, 2023. These are my suggested edits to the UTEP. And then you might also want to go to that last handout, which is the proposed UTEP, because that's what all my comments are about. Okay, I'm going to start off. All right, if you look at the proposed UTEP, section 2, they have definitions. What I propose is they need to add new definitions to refer to a base pilot and enhanced. In the proposed, there is no difference. It's all just a pilot. And if you look at the old UTEP, they talk about a base pilot is good for 10 years. On year 11, you pay 100% of the taxes. In the current UTEP, they want to just kind of go on like for solar up to 30 years. It just goes on onward. And then in the current UTEP, the enhanced pilot, you pay 100% of your taxes on year 16. So I think they need to go back to the proposed UTEP and have the definition between base pilot and enhanced. They kind of refer to enhanced in a way. They talk about new construction pilot. But I think they changed the name. That used to be what they called enhanced. Now they call it something different. But it should be in the definitions. And you need to differentiate, in my opinion, between a base pilot and what used to be enhanced.
Can I address that?
Yeah.
Okay, I think that if you remember what enhanced pilot is, enhanced pilot means it doesn't fit into the categories put in place. Enhanced pilot is exactly what we do in CHPE. That went out 30 years. In order to do enhanced pilot, we had to get the way we did it, we had to get the permission, by law, we had to get permission of all the taxing authorities to become enhanced pilot.
But now you don't have to because it's just all pilot.
No, pilot, enhanced pilot are two different things.
Can you show me in your new proposed UTEP where you have to go to a municipality for permission? And I'm not talking about Appendix M.
Your new policies too, right? I believe Dave, that's exactly where it is in that.
Because in your new one, you refer a couple times to enhanced pilot, but there's no definition of what enhanced pilot is.
Pilot, new construction pilot.
Enhanced pilot is anything that doesn't fit into the categories we gave.
Is it enhanced pilot and new construction pilot?
No, enhanced pilot could be, for example, CHPE with enhanced pilot, that's 30 years. Worked out the benefit of Washington County, all the towns it went through. So you got new construction pilot, you got manufacturing adjustment interest, development, other elements.
Okay, slow down so we can find where you are. What page do you want?
Page 9, it's on my page.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the old UTEP enhanced meant it was more years, correct? More than 10 years. It would be up to 15 years.
It could be, but like you said, you can enhance pilot, you can enhance pilot for 18, which is 30.
But nothing in here says if you go to an enhanced pilot or what you call new construction pilot, nothing in here says you have to go to the municipality for approval.
Let's put your pages on, make sure everything is what's
And use time. There is time.
They talk about input.
It tells you which section to look in.
Well, what Dave's looking for, I can kind of think what they're doing. Okay, my next item is
Back to our conversation about appendix N, we refer to certain towns. There needs to be a little bit more clarity as to what certain towns are. All right, now if I go to my item number 2,
I'm sorry, I found it. I found it. Section 2 definition.
then maybe at the end you can come back. You want to write notes as I keep on going.
I just wondered, Dan, in the old one, it was pilot and enhanced pilot, and the new one, it appears to be pilot or new construction. Enhanced to the new theory, right?
Yeah.
That's what he's saying, is
But-
that you want.
But if you go to page 3,
Yeah.
okay, the very top, review and notification of town necessary. All enhanced real property, they use the word enhance. All enhanced real property tax exemptions will be subject to review. Okay, and then this is where, if the town has comments, you must provide it in writing 3 days before the public hearing. Remember last month I asked you, Dave, is there a requirement of 2 days? And you said no. And you're doubling down, and your new proposal was 3 days.
It's 3 days.
Right.
Now, remember that when we get information in, we have to get it out to our members prior to the meeting to review. We're not saying you can't make additional comments. We're saying that comments submit them to us before that. So we can get them out to our members and circulate them so people have that information, especially when written, before we start.
This says you must give notification to the town it's in enhanced. Doesn't say anything about you must get their approval or decline.
Okay,
All right.
Dana Hogan,
Just to clarify, how long, what's the notification process from the IDA to the during comments? Did I give 10 days?
10 days.
Yes. Or the IDA has to notify the town within 10 days of the decision.
Yes, when we make a
That's what
decision.
we- The town has to get the responses back together, compiled to get to the
No, if
IDA.
you look at what we're trying to do is that when you get the application, they're shared with the town supervisor and the reception.
Yeah, how many days before?
Oh, it's gotta be at least, because we have to do public hearings. Notice is like 15 days. We have to do it before our executive meeting, before that, we have to bring it to the board, so we're probably in most cases 2 months ahead of time.
Has anybody ever seen, Sam Hall sent me this. This is the new thing from the governor about new laws affecting IDAs, and it's all about notification. You have to do it by certified mail. It's all the requirements that they have to do. This is brand new because I don't think it's just our IDA. Many IDA is not really notifying the taxing jurisdictions like they're supposed to. All right, my next item is item number 2, section 3, which starts on page 2 of the UTEP. And underneath item B, exceptions. It says the agency reserves the right to deviate from such policy in special circumstances. I think in here you should, again, I want to overkill. You should insert something about appendix N into this. And then also, if you go down to B2, the very bottom, discretion to deviate. Notwithstanding any of the foregoing provisions of the agency at its discretion reserves the right to deviate from its UTEP. You have a policy that says you can ignore your entire policy. That's nuts. The old UTEP. I'm gonna go to the old UTEP because Dave, you mentioned to me, the old one had it in there also, and I didn't seem to mind. The old one talks about recapturing of benefits. You can recapture benefit, you can deviate from your UTEP to recapture benefits. The new wording is you can deviate from the entire thing. I don't think that's right.
Dana, You note that isn't a UTEP, there's a copy of section 8 from the old policy, we talked about one copy, but that was in the old policy. We've just taken things out to make sure they're all in one place, because in the old policy, we skip around. We pulled it out in place of turning and put it in one place, so everything regarding UTEP is one place, not another place.
Dave, this is in the old UTEP?
Yes.
This is section 13. The old UTEP doesn't even have up to section 13. The old UTEP is simply 4 pages long.
No. What I just said was the section of UTEP spread out through the entire policy. We pulled them out of the entire policy to put in one place. So we have consistency where we did in one place to look at it, because it was confusing. It was spread all over the place. But section 13 is part of the old policy.
And it's section 13 in the new UTEP. The new UTEP goes, well, it only goes up to section 10. Where is section 13? And even in your new one, only goes to 10. The old one, it's only 4 pages long, doesn't go up.
That's not true, David. You go back to the policy and you will find section 13. The old policy.
What UTEP are you currently following right now? The 1999
When
one?
UTEP was spread out through the entire policy, we pulled it all out so we had consistency and put it in one place, and it wasn't confusing what we're talking about right now.
Well, I think it's fundamentally wrong that you have a policy that says you can ignore your entire policy. That leaves a hole big enough to drive a snowplow through. All right. if
So
I can
you
continue.
believe ignore and deviate have the same meaning? I guess that would be my question. I don't know if that's the thing.
It says the agency at its discretion reserves the right to deviate from its UTEP.
So if you're gonna deviate, why bother have a policy if you can just deviate from it anytime you want? That's really not.
It allows too much for perception and not everybody's
If
perception.
you can say deviate based upon some recapture, specific things, that makes sense.
The old one said that.
Yeah, if you just say, well, the policy, we have a personnel policy, but if we decide that we like to play better, we'll just deviate from it, take care of that. But it should be cleaned up.
I think the deviation, if there's gonna be one, it should still include the towns and the bank.
Approval.
Right.
Not input.
Well, the old UTEP, on the very last page, when it talks about recapture benefits, the very last paragraph says, approval of town necessary. All enhanced real property tax abatements will be subject to the approval of the town or city within which project is located. The town or city will be required to take into consideration the needs of the school. So on the old one, they said town approval must be made. Okay, I'm gonna. No, that's why we want Appendix N in the new one, because Appendix N are certain towns. And if you're a town that's not on Appendix N, you might want to join.
That's still called the sales tax. Board.
Right.
Even though you can put a package in there, it can still offer sales tax abatement.
Well, then you
Tax
should,
abatement on solar.
then you should offer an edit there as well. Okay, all right.
If I may, for a second. My attorney is watching, she had a couple comments. We notified all of the banking jurisdictions of the hearing and with a copy of the resolution by certified mail and return receipt. That has to go out 10 days prior to the meeting. We are required by law to notify a municipality of the deviation.
You read it on your watch? That's incredible.
Dana,
So that's what I was saying, 10 days notification, 3 days response. So you cut it down to a week where the towns have to put together, or the county has to put their response to get it back to the IDA for their handling. Is that correct?
I can see you in a minute.
That's what I was saying. When you said no, you said no, they got a couple months, or it's 10-day notification. We have to get our remarks back within 3 days prior to the meeting. So that leaves us 1 week to get the information back to the IDA for their hearing.
Understood.
It's too short a time frame.
I think especially in a smaller town, because they're not as big a staff, they're not opened every day. You may not get certified mail.
Well, I think the
it
certified
definitely-
mail though is the last.
Right.
It should be brought in, as Dave said, the 60 days. That's what we prefer, is you're brought in way before what the actual law requests. The whole idea was to bring everybody in sooner, not after what the
Dana Hogan?
stipulation by law is.
What you prefer and what Dana Hogan
I
could
love
say
you
are
saying,
different.
saying all the right things again, Brian.
Let's-
The reality is
what
you
do you wanna
don't, you can just take the input, you don't have to act on the input. When you say brought in, were the town brought in when you revoked 487? When you made the
I
motion
do
to revoke,
not
it, did
know
you
what
consider the
got
town
sent out
input?
or did not get sent out.
Or did you consider
I'll
the
be
town
honest.
input when you made that motion?
Yeah, so.
Did you notify any of the towns? Did you
It's
notify
not
the
my
county?
personal job to notify the towns.
That's the
That's
meaning
what-
of the IDA right now.
Right.
This is why we gotta look at
Yeah.
resolving from the IDA. They're not acting in our.
And that's what the
Any
discussion is supposed to be about, is how we're gonna do that better, and it has to be done better. I agree totally.
So today, do you have your IDA hat on or your county hat on?
County hat.
Okay. So do you think that was appropriate? None of the towns nor the county were notified? of the
I don't know if any
487?
of them were or weren't notified, because as a
I
member, I don't know who gets notified and doesn't get notified.
The only way I know is by
Our office.
reading the minutes. Which is why this new thing about, from the governor about, you need to notify your taxing jurisdictions of things that affect them. That was not done. We didn't know you did it, Dave, until we started opening up this can of worms. If I can continue.
Yes.
I'm still on page 3 of the proposed UTEP review and notification, where they mentioned enhanced. Dave, you said the town has to give approval. Right in that paragraph C, it says town approval is not required. But comments have to be submitted 3 days before. You say right here, town approval not required. And I'm sorry, Dave and Brian, what you say doesn't matter a lick. It's the words on the page.
Absolutely right. You have to get that correct.
It's within the 4 corners of this page, these words are what, because 5 years from now, we won't know what you said, but we will know what we can read. Okay, so again, review and notification necessary. Town approval is not required except certain towns. That needs to be put in here, except certain towns, which are appendix N. Okay. Item F on the same page.
Can I step in for a minute?
Yes.
Is there some how that you can include in this policy also, because town leadership changes, has the possibility of changing every 2 years? There should be some kind of annual review or annual or biennial or something set out to the town, so towns are aware that this is one of their responsibilities and something that might happen. Somewhere in your policy, please. I mean, is everybody in agreement with that? Something needs to be added about that. The education or review process or a joint meeting here, IDA comes in, something along those lines so that incoming leaders know.
But the idea that new leaders too.
This is true, but it works for them well.
Let me say that we normally, when we do things, we send, every time notifications go out, we send it to the clerk of the board in both counties.
That's for the
No.
meetings, but I think you need to do something that's more educational. So you're aware it's one of your responsibilities.
Let me continue down, so I understand it. So I think that first, what we need to do is to, probably the best way, because the counties keep up the notification to supervisors better than we can, what the email addresses are, is that maybe we could get the, clerk and board, when we get our notices, to send it out to the town supervisors. We always have the current ones, not relying on the idea to keep up, but the clerk and boards on both counties should be able to do that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I have been thinking about as part of the process, is because if I ask people, in some cases, what an idea really does and what the charters are, most people don't know. What I would like to do is to have an education process where the lawyer and myself and other people in Chuck can sit down and we can do a education course on what it is and what happens. So yes, I've had that in my thought process there. I didn't mean to go to winding road to get what I want. I want to cover both of them.
I
Right,
can't speak for Warren County because I don't know their total structure, but that is, those presentations maybe should be made monthly or quarterly anyway, from the IDA to our economic development. That's really where that belongs. We should always be communicating as to what's going on, what's happening. As far as we can be told, we know that there's some things about companies and the rules and you're not allowed to talk about ongoing stuff. I get that, but things that are actually ongoing that we can talk about could be expressed monthly or quarterly, whatever it takes. And we have a committee to.
Now we have a,
Yes, I'm sorry, I don't know. your name.
Doug Beatty, I'm the Queensborough Supervisor, County Board, Warren County. I don't think I've ever I can't remember the IDA or reps ever presenting anything to the county board. Anything. So if you're saying we should do that in the future, by all means, but as a Queensborough resident in the solar issue right now at CBE, I'm getting calls left and right. They want you guys to step up, do the right thing, and to get out of that deal. It is almost $3 million of taxpayer money, and Queensborough is bearing the brunt of $2.5 million. That is just not right. So as a Queensborough supervisor and also resident of Queensborough, I implore you guys to look at ways of getting out of that deal. And then we can go into the pros and cons of solar and so forth. But this particular deal in Queensborough is a huge burden to our taxpayers. So, but getting back, no one's ever from the IDA ever presented, and those, shame on us, those are our guys. They haven't done that.
So we want to work together, you better communicate.
Yeah, Hicks.
So I'm gonna be the other side of the coin a little bit. It's really incumbent upon us, the supervisors, to know what's going on. I really shouldn't have to expect them to educate. Perhaps you could put together something that would be, you could do one time, so that when IDAs change and supervisors change, a training module, a video of some sort,
That's what I'm
video
talking about.
instead of having to do ongoing education all the time, a one-time shot. I'm a new supervisor, I can watch that. Then when I have questions, I can get back to you. I think it's a little more burden on us than on them, but it's both ways.
No, I think definitely the new supervisors need to know what's going on and that it's another one of their responsibilities is to watch that. Because when you first hit the door, there's so much. And you get so many emails and then you get the lectures on what you shouldn't open, what you don't know. So I don't know who this is. I don't know who this is. So you can, but I think somehow
Do it
what the
once.
IDA,
Just do it once. Set up
like
something
every
once, you
other
can all
year.
watch it one time.
but also I also agree with what Brian says, what can be discussed, because you can avert some of these problems when you're in the 11th hour. And now there's a public uproar. If it had been a little more public sooner,
Yep.
it wouldn't have been, you could have fixed it. You could have listened sooner. Did you have,
So.
I think Dave had more.
Anyways, one comment. Now we have someone that is in there all the time. Chuck, who's the CEO, he can come and make those presentations. So that's a communication arm, because that's what we plan to do.
So we all heard Dave say he was making one comment, right? Used it up. Gonna say, on that subject, your words need to be correct. Go ahead. Dina. Yes.
Okay, next is in section 3F, which is also on page 3. Use of local contractors, workers, and suppliers. It's the intent of the agency to encourage applicants to make every effort to use local suppliers. Okay, and contractors. Now, go to page 11 or page 13 in the proposed UTEP. Page 13 talks about impact on local economy jobs. It says the number and type of local jobs retained and used during the construction phase, they need to report. Item B, they need to report the number and type of jobs retained and created by the project upon commencement. It doesn't say anything about the number of jobs. If you go to the current 1999 UTEP, it says for manufacturing, warehouse, wholesale distribution, remanufacturing, assembly processing, product research and development, and office functions is a minimum of 10 new jobs created. And in the current one, you specify how many jobs. In this one, you just say they have to report the number of jobs. I think if you're going to give abatements, and there's 3 abatements, right? You have sales tax, mortgage tax,
real property transfer tax. Those are what you abate. Sales tax is probably the biggest. If you're gonna abate dollars amount, they need to be pegged to a job. Say every $75,000 worth of abatement, you must create one full-time job during the operation phase. It just can't be you tell us the number of jobs, because we all know solar, the only jobs are during the construction. They're building one right now in Hartford. They're all from out of town. They're not local. I think there needs to be something about the number of local jobs created per dollar amount of abatement.
So. if
Jim
we-
Griffin?
I'm gonna be devil's advocate here on this one, Dana. I think you're right. I think 10's a high number. So the current IDA project with Morcon, it's a huge investment for Morcon to keep their headquarters in White Creek. The situation with jobs, they're only adding 8 new jobs. That's because a lot of the manufacturing is being updated, so it's more electronic manufacturing. So the jobs that are going to be added are higher tech engineer jobs, which are higher paying jobs, which is great. But the job increase is only going to be 8 new jobs out of that project.
All right, well, then suggest an amendment to what I'm saying.
Yeah, I would go at least, but 5 seems like a small number, you know?
The problem is
To do it-
technology has changed between that day and this day.
Yeah,
But instead of a certain job number, 5, 10, couldn't you peg it to a certain dollar amount of abatement? Say every $100,000 of abatement, you have to have one full-time job or something.
I get what you're saying. I'm open to having something of criteria there. Yeah,
Well, what is that criteria gonna be?
right.
Let me,
Oh, I'm sorry, Bob, I didn't see you.
Well, I was just gonna say, James was pretty much defined what I was gonna talk about, because I think while Morcon's a little bit bigger, I think a lot of times the IDA is working with, mom and pops and this kind of thing, trying to keep them in here and, creating 2 new jobs in in the Hartford hardware might be pretty tough, because they don't have 2 jobs in the first place.
Are they gonna get $3 million worth of abatement? I don't think so.
Well, that's true, but I think that it's a really tough balancing thing to. And I'm not sure I could suggest a decent.
Dana Hogan sent me a link to in Orange County, they're talking about dissolving the IDA because it's looked upon that they are chasing fees without creating jobs. And there was a big project in Orange County, and it ended up being 1 full-time job per $500,000 of abatement. That's way too much abatement for 1 job. I think that there needs to be something. Otherwise, what is the IDA doing?
Dave?
so when we talk about this, we talk about the fact that we're not only here to attract companies in, we're competing with people from outside the state, in some cases for people. We're competing like Jimmy just said, with Morcon, we're really considering moving the part of the location to South Carolina if they have another plant. So you're talking about different needs for different organizations. We have a company, which I can't be specific about, which is talking about putting a brand new investment in, which is going to raise the assessment value in one of the counties. And it may not increase the jobs, but the investment in assessment is going to be substantial. So, we have to look at every factor. We can't just peg on jobs. We need to peg on, can we retain people? I'll give you another example. Lehigh Cement. They are leaving the area. Part of our job would be to go to Lehigh Cement and say, Lehigh, what can we do to help you stay here? Are there things we can do for job retention? Are there things we can do to keep you here? In this case, the answer is no. But if a company was having trouble, part of our job is not just to attract new companies, attract new investment, but keep companies here. We need to keep companies here. We need to incentivize them to stay here to help with the hard times. And that's part of deviation, because that may not be a 10-year project or a 15-year project. It may be a 2, 3, or 4-year project. That would be a change in deviation in the policy. So that's why deviation is important, because in some cases, I know other IDAs, instead of doing 10-year pilots, may do 5-year pilots. That's a deviation policy. Now, I agree we can do things to solve some of your concerns there. And I don't know what that is, it's important, I can't commit to what it's gonna say. I am saying we're committing to looking at that, understanding. You've done a lot of work. You have really pointed out some things that we didn't see, and we appreciate that.
I'm not doing it.
Well, no, I'm not gonna say that. That is completely constructive. So I'm just trying to say that on appendix 8, in the new policy, it tells you how we evaluate project. It's not just on jobs, it's on retention of companies. It's on importing the companies, making sure companies come here versus go someplace else. You know,
Okay, we have a couple comments on that. I'm gonna go to Jay first because he hasn't spoken yet.
So Dave, along with what you're saying as far as retaining companies and whatnot and getting investments in here. A lot of towns opted out of 40. So let's get back to what brought this issue up. It's the solar. The IDA does not need to incentivize solar.
Right.
They're gonna come to the locations that are prime, and the big ones, just like in Dan's, they don't even have to ask anybody. The state has said they can go ahead and do it. Now, if you were to poll my town, half my town would say, solar farm does not do anything for our community. It doesn't help us. It's taking away good ag land value. My people around the lakes be complaining because they're looking at solar farms instead of beautiful rolling hills. The IDA needs to leave the solar program, just walk away from it, not touch any of it, period.
Both
Dana
assembly
Hogan.
members.
Dana Hogan has the floor.
So Jim, you made a good point about job creation. One of the things of concern is that it's not defined and we've allowed too much deviation as per the IDA's judgment. Dave, you told me just the other day about a project in Warren County that got approved because it's providing quote, middle income rental value or rental property. But yet when I asked you, what's the metric you're going to check? Because in 2 years, if they raise the rent on that project, you had no answer. So we don't know. And if I recall, that was a former IDA board member that got that benefit. And because you told me, according to what I also read in the paper, was it because he experienced cost overrun. So we granted IDA benefits, sales tax abatement, mortgage tax abatement, and pilots to somebody who just got off the IDA board. And the idea was because they were providing modest income rental value or rental
workforce housing.
workforce housing. Now, what did you guys put in the agreement to make sure in 2 years those rents don't double? Is there anything in there?
No, I don't remember the agreement.
You don't remember. It's probably my guess is there's probably nothing in that agreement. Is that accurate? Brian, do you remember you voted
I
on it?
would guess you're probably correct. There's probably
Nothing.
something vague, like you said, but nothing that holds them
This
to
is
it.
the kind of stuff.
That's why
So Dana's giving us some solutions in terms of job creation. Job retention is fine as well. We can use those definitions. Those are good definitions. This pie in the sky stuff where, well, it's good for community solar, good because 1,000, as you described it the other day, low income families have access to community solar. You don't need to be low income, if I recall correctly. They can go to anybody. And there's plenty of community solar out there right now. So everybody's aware, you can make a phone call and get it all day long. This is the kind of stuff that you got to start defining this because this is what's creating the issues, as Jay just said. This is solar got us into this. And then we start looking at it. You have a project up in Warren County that, I don't know, it was middle income is the way it was described to me, but there's no metrics in there to claw that money back if those rents double in 2 years. That's shameful. And it's shameful that anybody even approved that. I don't know how anybody can look in the mirror and say, I approved that without qualifying and saying you better not raise rents in 2 years.
And you're right, because that's also where the part that Dana mentioned about the deviation and the recapture. There should be something there that if you double your rate or if it goes up by 50%, now our recapture is going to be different than it's ever been before. That really should be the way it's worded.
Brian, how long have you been on the idea?
I was on it once before for a year. I think I've been on it 3 now, maybe 2.
I'll ask anybody in here. Anybody aware of the IDA and the history of that organization recapturing benefits?
Oh, I only know one from my tenure. But there's still 40 years before me. 40 plus years before me.
But if it was written better, to your point, you could do recapture.
The parameters have to be better.
If you set that up the way you
I
said.
believe you, Brian. I'm giving an example. I go to the Warren County folks talking about this solar project the other day, and it doesn't sound there's a lot of appetite to do that. Now, I heard somebody in the meeting the other day spoke two incorrect statements. He said the state pushing this stuff? They're not pushing it. They're saying, if you want to promote it, you can't. This whole idea that this came from general municipal law, was it 852 or 862?
852.
That's a reach to say that this was a result of that, because I read that statement. And that's really vague in terms of, we want you to promote it. Doesn't say anything about bonusing or incentivizing
There's a
companies.
difference between promotion.
And then the other one. Taking much time looking at that. Sorry.
Can I continue?
Back to the other things.
Thank you. I admit this thing about the 10 new jobs and putting it, pegging it. I didn't think this had a prayer, a passing. But it should. We need to make pilots associated with the number of jobs created, because the IDA was originally formed. The idea was you give abatement on the sales tax for manufacturing, and they're going to make a whole bunch of widgets and sell those widgets and get sales tax, more sales tax than you abated. Now it's completely out of whack. You're going to do solar farms that doesn't produce any sales tax or anything. And now you're giving for hotels and tourism.
Apartments for former members.
And I think it's just, you've opened the floodgates and it's too much. All right, if I want to go on to my next item, section or part 3 of the proposed UTEP, which is section 4 on page 3. There's a whole lot here. I think we need to differentiate between base, pilot, and enhanced. And now I know your new enhanced, if you look at the charts that start with all the different pilots on page 9, you call what is enhanced, you call them all new construction pilot, new construction pilot, new construction pilot. If you're going to change the name from enhanced to that, that's fine. But
New construction is not.
I didn't see it against the area.
on top of page 3, they refer
Refer to it.
No,
to all enhanced pilots. But they don't define what that is.
no, enhanced real property tax deduction. That's different. That's a different definition.
But you do have such thing as enhanced pilot.
I don't see that in the new.
No, I know, but that's what I'm saying.
It should be.
It should be in. If it's a possibility, then it should be there. That's what the request is to have it in the definition, so that if it comes up.
Because there's a difference in the number of years that, in the old one, it was, the base pilot was on year 11, we pay full amount, so it's a 10-year.
If there's no enhanced pilot listed here, then there is no enhanced pilot in the,
Now they're all just
either
one.
base or construction.
That's right. And I think that's a big change, because in the old one, for an enhanced, they must come to the town. All towns, not appendix N towns. All towns, they must. Now they don't have to.
So just define that.
Great, that was his request. Fine.
All right, I'm going to go to my item number 4.
Can I say I'm going to?
Go ahead.
I was a little confused on this one.
Okay.
Sales and use tax exemption, that's section 4. That has nothing to do with base pilot or enhanced pilot. Sales tax and use tax abatement are not part of the pilot.
If you go to page 4, they talk about the period of the exemption. Isn't that the main difference between a base and
Sales
enhanced?
and use tax exemption is only for initial construction costs of the project. There's a set amount that's based on how much materials they spend and the sales tax on that. It has nothing to do with the pilot and not pilot.
Okay.
But I was confused why you're saying that, because it doesn't, they're not related.
Okay, Roger, how do you, if we're gonna have a resolution on the Board of Supervisors, do you want me to go through each one of these and say, okay, I make a motion, we do that, and if it passes a thing on each item, and then you know what to write it?
I guess that's up to you as to how you want to do that. If you can want people to be active discussions about multiple things in one resolution, so.
But the resolution affects this 15-page document. So, would you want one resolution with my ideas, and then my ideas, we can say yes or no, throw them in, throw them out?
Well, wait a
And
minute.
then,
Is your resolution gonna force them to include it?
What's the resolution?
No, our resolution is that we are informing them what we expect them to do
As a county, not as a town, as a county.
as a county.
Well, that's how you do it.
Board of
Yeah.
Board of-
Well, if it come out of
That's a
here,
fine thing, that's all.
yeah, no, I agree.
Well, it's
But
a-
if it come out of committee,
So
wouldn't that be?
it's
automatic?
advisory to the members of the IDA, is that what you're saying? Is that the-
Yes, and this is, and we, because they serve at our pleasure.
Right.
That's the whole thing here, that this is what we expect them to do.
a resolution to the IDA. We can't demand anything, but we can tell them what we expect. And if they don't, then the chips fall where they fall.
I would think you'd want to have that advice contained in one resolution.
Okay, but my resolution is gonna have many parts, so can we do a vote to throw
We can
each
amend
part
it.
in or out? And then somebody could amend that? Because some of these, my idea might not have any support, therefore it's out.
Well, so I would, rather than put a resolution and then amend it, I think you discuss these ideas individually and then say, see if you have a consensus to put it in or out, and then the resolution would be, rather than just having individual votes on each concept. I think you'd be able to tell from the discussion whether that concept.
Okay, but I think now I need to do a little bit piecemeal because there may be one part of this nobody likes and then they're not gonna vote for the entire thing. All right, so my first part in this resolution is,
All legislation has that in it. When you think
All right.
about it, and sometimes legislation is actually drafted to make that happen, so I guess that's.
so what I'm talking about is a motion from this committee, right, to go to the board, so that's how we have to do it.
Yes.
Okay, all right, so back to my comments, January 24th. Section 2, does everyone agree that they need the definitions, they need to differentiate between a base pilot and an enhanced pilot?
Yes.
Anybody know?
Yeah, well, yes, I'm a no.
Okay, so,
Base pilot, construction pilot. The word enhanced isn't in here anywhere.
all right, so you would
Take it
rather,
out of C, all enhanced real property tax exemptions, just say all real property tax exemptions. And the word enhanced doesn't get anybody confused anymore.
Is enhanced pilot.
Do we have enhanced pilots going forward? Because according to this, we don't. You just have two, right?
Well, the only way that should happen would be if it was a deviation and then it should go back to the town.
But if you're gonna have an enhanced pilot as a deviation, shouldn't you define what an enhanced pilot is? Because it's not defined.
Well, it should never come up unless somebody wants to deviate, and that could be the town that wants to deviate, could be the county. could be-
So is
So-
the
so-
possibility of the
So
future,
it's
you
not
can
defined.
put the definition
It's
in.
not defined what the enhanced pilot would be.
So I don't think it would be defined. I think it'd be according to the situation, but you should go back to the town to make that happen.
So, Brian, I agree that we need to, if it's not in here, we need to define enhanced spec in here.
If it exists.
It does exist.
Okay.
Right. Has the possibility of
I thought it was in here.
the
So it
Yes.
should be defined in this file.
okay, so Roger, that's, you got your direction there for the.
Nobody has, we have satisfied the majority of the people agree with that, with his.
Okay,
version.
yes, I can go on. I'm sorry, I'm taking up so much time. Okay, underneath item number 1, insert a definition of the certain municipalities. You need to have, in the definitions, you need to have something that says what the certain towns are.
Oh, you agree with that?
Okay, that's appendix
Have it
10.
listed right there.
Okay.
Everybody agrees?
Anybody against?
Roger has,
So we're instructing them
Well,
to
that's-
insert something that we don't know what it's gonna say.
That's my point is,
That's
they
my-
have, this is a draft, they haven't even come up with a final draft. You're telling them today what to put in there. We now want to formally pass a resolution to tell them, why don't we wait and see what they come back with the final draft is? And if we don't like it, then.
But this is our guidance, so they can make
Well, They've had a
that.
guy all day.
as a record of it, if we do it
Right,
as
and
a
after March 1st,
resolution.
they're gonna give us what they really plan on doing.
But then they
Then we
say,
can go back and pass these resolutions.
yeah, but then they say.
And then what happens?
And
Right.
if they don't put it in there, they don't want to vote them off.
You can write it like this.
Okay,
That's the process. We're different.
so
here.
Ken,
You're waiting for all the horses to leave the barn.
knock it off. So really, all we're doing is putting it in a form of resolution. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you put it in a resolution, then there's a written record, or at least somehow it's in the minutes, that there's a written record that as a board, these are our recommendations going forward to the IDA. I think that's what some people have in mind they want. Other people don't want it done yet because we haven't seen the final draft. So we have to submit in writing to tell you what our recommendations are. What's the harm in the resolution? Why shouldn't we do it or
There's
should
no
do it?
harm in the resolution. My concern about that is, so let's take that second bullet point. Insert a definition. You're saying insert a definition. So they insert a definition. And you don't like the definition they insert. Where are we? They've complied with the resolution. They've inserted a definition. It's just not your definition.
So when they bring back the final copy, then we can
then you're gonna
another
say,
send back.
Second bite of the apple.
Right now, they
Right.
define it as,
Exactly.
but
as
I
certain
guess,
towns. What is certain town?
Can we just put in the future to have a list included in the final copy?
Well, this is the living I'm sorry, Roger.
Yeah.
This is the living document. This is gonna go on for years and years. So if a town joins the end list 6 months from now, a year from now, they would be included. So you really don't want to say what those towns are,
Right,
because it could easily change.
update it, somehow update the list somehow, I don't know.
I could see using this list as guidance, but I would think your resolution would want to discuss something that was more certain, something that, so in other words, once the policy comes out in whatever form the IDA is going to consider, I would think this body would want to consider that, review that policy before the IDA passed it, and then say to the IDA, yes, we agree with this, or no, we instruct our members to vote no on that policy when it comes before them.
Or vote to amend the parts we don't like.
Right, or something along those lines versus, so a guidance document, you know, a committee could say, we'd like the chairman to write a letter. Or the board could say, we'd like the chairman to write a letter with this kind of guidance in it, but I want something specific to say yes or no or to amend rather than, or you want specific concept. We want paragraph 2 of that thing to say this. Otherwise, it's, how do you declare victory? How are you going to know you've gotten what you wanted when you're done? That's always my question when we're writing a contract, when we're doing whatever. It's like, how am I gonna declare victory? Yes, I got what I wanted. Well, I got a definition, but it's not the definition I wanted. You didn't tell me what definition you wanted, so I gave you the definition I want. And here we are doing this again. So I get concerned when we say insert a definition. I'm looking for specificity, I guess.
So
But
is-
I don't know how you get that before you either get specific here and say, I want to see these words in that policy. Or you let them write the policy and say, I don't like those words. I want to do it a different way.
Well, the reason I'm saying that, Roger, is because on my next point of section 2, I'm saying insert wording about appendix N, but I think you have to have a definition in the definition part as
Yes,
to what the certain town, you know, certain towns refer to in appendix N or some other name. That's what I'm seeking. This is in the definition part, because further on, we refer to appendix N.
I get what you're saying, but I'd like to see that instead of just saying insert definition, the definition of certain towns should be whatever it is. And maybe I'm getting too literal here, but I think
Can
that's,
you come up with something that you think would appease the group that, from what they're saying?
I haven't yet come up with something to repeat.
You're being greedy with something that may sleep.
What I'm seeking here is to make this UTEP better for the county and the towns that we represent. And if I lose on some and win on the other, I'm not gonna say, oh, I didn't get everything I want. I'm trying to make this book better.
But would a resolution that says here's what we're trying to accomplish. We would like the IDA to pass a UTEP that takes that more closely either follows exactly or takes into consideration the towns and villages and school districts wishes. That provides notice of no less than X number of days. I'm thinking of the upper level. We want to see that policy have that. Then when the policy comes in, you can say it has that, or it doesn't have that. And then say to your members, it doesn't have enough of it, or whatever, and then say to your IDA members through a resolution, vote yes or vote no.
But to argue with you, why should we have a resolution out of the county committee and the county board about what's protecting the towns? Each town should do that. We should only be looking at how this UTEP affect the county here.
Well,
The
if
county
you,
should
so,
join appendix N.
right, if you'd like to speak
There we go.
if you'd like to speak as a county to those concerns, because the county has its own concerns with taxes.
That's where we should be addressing.
Yes, as a county, yes.
Yes, but on the list of certain towns, why couldn't it be certain towns and certain counties? Counties can join,
No.
villages can join.
Mortgage tax, sales tax, that's it. That's how we should, that's the only thing that the county should address. The town should address all the other issues you're talking about.
Because you still have appendix N to deal with your final issues.
Okay. No, I like what Roger said. Instead of saying, put something in this spot, we just tell them we want it in it, and then IDA can figure out.
These are the concepts we want you to emphasize in this
that affect the county, in this. And then the direction is you go forward, because supposedly they're the subject matter experts to accomplish those goals. And then they come back and you say either you've accomplished the goals to our satisfaction or you haven't. So it's a elevated level. Because if you want to be the IDA, I guess I agree with Mr. Happ, do away with the IDA, and then you can be the IDA yourselves. That's why you directly have an IDA.
Can we do our,
What's that?
can we do our own on that note? I'll wait till later to ask that question.
James Shaw hasn't talked in a
Yeah,
while.
well, my question, and Matt touched on it, and Dana keeps referring to it, is part of the problem the fact that we're trying, some towns are different than other towns? I mean, some are, that's why you keep wanting to list the towns that it affect versus those that don't affect. Why isn't and shouldn't all the towns be treated the same? In which case, whatever has to be done,
We have self-determination. Local control over pilots and things like that.
You may not want to be treated.
no,
We don't want to do this.
They may not want to be treated.
well, no, and here's the thing, if every town of the two counties are in, whatever list you want to refer to, list N or the other one. And then, and make it even simpler, but after you say that, everybody's in the counties they're both in, and the county and the town that it impacts has to be notified, then it becomes the town's responsibility to negotiate or make the comments that impact the town. And the county will have been notified, and it would come to government ops. And then the county could discuss the impact to the county, rather than trying to break this down to where it's separate for each one. I think it benefit the IDA and it benefit us. I mean, if I'm not notified that there's a pilot being put into my town, was the town of Queensbury notified that, and the impacts that would be made with that?
They're notified, but, there's some confusion on, that information was passed along to the town board.
But they were there at the.
Well, see, and there you go. If every town was treated the same and every town board got the notice, and this is what is transpiring, this is the negotiation, and this is how it will impact the county or the town, and in fact, the county of Warren should have been notified of what the impacts would be. Then there'd be nothing hidden. And when it gets down to the town level, the town of Easton, we would discuss that and say, how does this impact me? Totally different than how it would impact you. And that's what we're trying to do, is make this so, even though our impacts are different, we're being treated the same as we can be.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The school district is the one biggest, has the biggest impact on. Queensbury, the school district was there at the meeting, the town was there at the meeting with their council. The county was not at the meeting, because when I pushed our county attorney, why weren't we there? It's rather confusing, but he said they changed the name, that they did an end around, went to the IDA. He said, we had already sent out saying we want to be part of all negotiations. They weren't notified, correct? So there's some confusion on it, but the bottom line is, both school district, town of Queensbury were at the public hearing, but they were not heard, basically. The IDA said, thank you, and they still approved $462,000 of county abatement money, plus $2.5 million of Queensbury / school district money. And that over the objections of the school district and the town. That's over them. So we were there, we weren't heard. So this is what scares me about the IDA. They can listen to all you want, but they still can decide what they want.
So you simplify it, all you have to say, you have to have their approval. If the town and the county does not approve it, it's dead. And then you would be heard. Correct?
Well, I believe Dana brought up that they can deviate, they have the ultimate say, and they can override. They have the authority, I believe, to override the school district. They can override the town. they have the ultimate authority, the IDA. So I believe that's what occurred here, and, that's what.
And Roger, is there any way that can be restricted? Or is that the whole principle of the IDA? They can override what the county and what the town want?
Your power to control the IDA if it's in existence is by appointment of members.
That's it.
So they,
Okay, I have lots of hands. Dave, I've heard from a lot. Brian, I've heard from quite a few times. Tim and Carrie haven't spoken yet, so we'll go with Tim first.
It says town approval is not required. Right here, page 3, right? We want that changed. So it says town approval is required. That's simple. Right? Am I missing something?
No.
Well, so you can instruct the IDA to do that, however, if they choose not to do that, then your power is through the members.
We want to do it. We know everybody wants that.
If
on the list, we already have that.
But does it refer to only enhanced pilot? Because look at the first sentence, all enhanced. So
I think
is
it
it
should apply to all.
all pilots? So,
No, enhanced tax exemption. There's no enhanced pilot. In this. Let's we get it straight.
well, if Dave is going to include one. Dave's going to include
So
definition.
then there'll be a new draft.
Right. And so should it be town and school districts? Right?
If you read even the old ones, the town must speak for the school. The town represents the school. The school doesn't represent themselves.
But Danish choice of taxing authority would,
Taxing
This
jurisdiction.
is all new to me. I figured we'd have to say town
That
and.
could be. sewer district,
I think it
library
should say
district,
town.
Water district.
I think you should say town and county. Both have to.
Regardless.
you're all set. Okay, you're all set.
Everything.
Go ahead.
Travis weighed in. So there's just a question here that I want to clarify. Is it agreed that the present definition of enhanced tax exemption is something that goes in excess of 10 years? Is that the way the present that reads?
I don't know. You
No.
can't figure it out.
Tax exempt and pilot. I think are two different things.
Where?
Is 10 years, is 10 years that all?
Can I create a comment, because this is what he's talking about.
Go ahead.
When the IDA is in this chain of title, that makes the property by generous law tax exempt. As part of the pilot, we require them to make payments to the taxing jurisdiction. So I think that's what you're talking about.
The fact that it's 15 years in the CP.
CV, yeah, 10 years or enhanced to 15 would be good.
What I'm saying is the definition of enhanced is anything greater than 10. And what it said is that it is enhanced and it required the approval of the town.
Correct.
The way it said. So how did CBE, how did you ever, under the existing policy, ignore what the town and school board said about an enhanced project? I'm wondering if there's
I'll leave that to legal answer from Karen.
legal answer. So this is the whole problem. And I was a member of the IDA for a year, so. And this is the problem, is that the 852 sets up what an industrial development agency, what are the jobs, economic development. And it says no retail, commercial. I think that something like condominiums and stuff like that would be far and away. But then you have the lawyer come in and say, oh, there used to be an empire zone in Washington County. And it says and we're going to call that a distressed area. And we've got an exception now. We can, because it's a distressed area, we can go ahead and we can approve this. Or in the case of Queensbury or something, tourism area, therefore we can deviate. And the lawyer says, yeah, there's no problem here, and there's no problem there to get the votes, so you can
that's what they want. So you have to be very careful. Because just like he's saying now, I gotta talk to my lawyer.
Okay,
Thank you.
Brian?
I think where Dan went was where we originally were trying to get, and I like the way he brought it, roundabout. The whole idea is for all the towns to get treated the same, whether they're on appendix N or not, no matter where they are. The whole idea is to get out 60 days in front. So all those discussions happen. You don't realize the number of things that die before they ever get to the full committee. Most of them die in the first few phone calls. Some end up dying with, as far as the executive committee, we never hear from them again. There's things ongoing all the time. But the whole idea is, if there's something that isn't wanted in your town, there's no reason we should want it in your town. That's the bottom line. So if we can get you involved earlier and buy in whether you want it or not, maybe Kingsbury doesn't want something, maybe Fort Edward says, hey, I'd like that if they don't want it. Then you can have a discussion with that company and see where it goes. That's what we're trying to get. But we should not try to take away your ability to be opposed to something and keep it out if you don't want it. That's not what we're meant to be. The only way economic development works is if we work together. I see it. I don't know why everyone else doesn't see it, but if we're just fighting with each other, we'll never get there. I think that the changes need to be made. We need to, and what I like about this whole discussion is it gives us a better idea to really focus on what goes into that UTEP so that in the future, we don't have a problem. I like everything you brought today. I'm happy.
If there was some self-governance, Brian, all that would be perfect. A month ago, you heard the input from the school of the town, Queensbury.
And
let me
just
finish.
right.
Let me finish. You voted anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
They both said opposite
Dana Hogan
things.
has
Hang
the
on one
floor.
second. So now if everybody looks at the budget of the IDA, okay? Look at the 23 budget with the fees. Do you know what the fees are? Expected
not
date
my head.
of election. Mr. Martin, do you know? You did.
About 900.
600,000, 640. 2 years ago, they were 120. Now, if anybody in this room believes that that's just going to be done based on the limitations we're about to try to put on this, it's not going to happen. You're saying all the right things again, but the reality is, if you had just listened a month ago, I don't think you would have had any of these problems. But the IDA unanimously voted in opposition to what Queensbury, the town wanted, and the school wanted. I don't know what else is more clear to see. Meaningless. Actions say it all. Roger, can I ask you a question before I forget to ask you this today? What will it take to dissolve the IDA if we choose to remove ourselves from the representation of this current IDA?
I, honest to God, and I talked to you about this on the phone, not research that in essence, but it couldn't function if we didn't appoint members. It couldn't function. That would immediately disable it.
So if we made a motion to remove our current members, that would essentially leave it defunct and it wouldn't be able to operate?
So here's the problem with the members are approved by both municipalities. So I think it would take, even for our Washington County members, it would take both municipalities or both counties.
Okay. So if we remove our current members and our appointees, what would happen to the IDA in your legal opinion and not reappoint anybody?
If there were vacancies,
Correct.
I don't see how they'd be able to function with the vacancies.
They're required to have at least 6 members. They only have 5.
So they couldn't, Warren County couldn't make appointments on our behalf. Is that correct?
No, because they would require our approval to appoint. We cross appoint because it says approval of the municipalities in the enabling legislation. We cross appoint. Remember, that's come up in the past where there's been a proposal by one county that the other county doesn't like, or vice versa.
That's why I would tell everybody in this room, if you're looking at this budget where they have to collect 600,000 in fees in 2023. That's what, over 400% increase since the 21 budget. The only way they're going to do that is to dangle incentives. Those dangle incentives are sales tax and mortgage tax. If we start pulling off solar from that picture, I don't see how they make that come good.
And how much have we approved the sewer district to raise the fees in the same time?
I'm sorry.
Sewer district, we've done the same thing here. Their fees have gone up and up. We had the guy sit right here and tell us, well, I can raise them 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%. when it's
You get a lot of
outside,
complaints from the ratepayers, Ryan?
when it's out of our realm, we say that's not us.
We
We
get a
just
lot of
run off.
complaints from the ratepayers, and that is,
And
the minute we
guess
start
the
getting
question-
complaints from the ratepayers, we'll start listening.
And I brought up this question in Friday's board meeting, what have we individually done for our towns? And what have we individually and collectively done for our county? So it's just, where do you want to go? What do you see the opportunities, the lack of opportunities, or want to restrict opportunities? Is where you want to be. Not everything's positive or negative, I'll give you that. Sometimes you think something's really positive and you agree to it and fucked up, wish you hadn't gone there, like the burn plant, for instance. But there's other times where things, if you didn't give them a chance, they wouldn't start. So the bottom line is, how far do you want to go to restrict opportunities? So that's a lot bigger question than anything we've discussed today.
I'm just gonna repeat myself, and all due respect, Mr. Hogan, Mr. Whitehead, and Mr. Baden, we're not gonna here to relitigate CBE. That shouldn't be a topic at all here today. Number two, we're here to give input to the IDA members that are part of this organization on how the new TEP should be amended to meet the goals of Washington County, which is sales tax. You love it when you interrupt people, but when people interrupt you, you get all pissy about it.
Well, you just mentioned my
Okay,
name,
guys,
and you were
let's
factually
go.
correct, Matt. I'm not taking the input.
All right.
We
I
haven't
have a
given them any
question.
input from the county. We
Matt.
haven't. That's what we're here for.
Matt, your
Totally
time is
right,
up.
Matt.
I have a question. So we have two members of the IDA that have never been to a meeting before. Was this, you don't have to say your opinions or why you voted or anything. Has this been educational for you to see what the opinions are of the supervisors here? You can just say yes or no. I'm not putting you on the floor.
I'd
You,
be happy to speak a little bit more if you let me.
okay.
Sure. No, absolutely. I mean, we've got 7 issues that you wanted to discuss. And one's time constraint, two's clarity, what's having, one's checks and balances, perception, and two's metrics. Small business owner, this is daily for us. You could give us 3 months and we'll have a further conversation. Very simple.
I like the way you broke it right down to the core issues. Jenny, did you want to say
I
anything?
would
or-
also agree with Juan. You clearly pointed out your concerns about the policy. We take those into consideration as a board and add those, although I think it's a little restrictive to suggest that a resolution could, come back and satisfy, but I think I understand too why we should have that in writing, and I would ask for that to be in writing so that we're clear on all of it. So that we can address.
I think it would be helpful when you go to your next draft.
I would agree.
Thank you, Chuck. You agree as well?
If we tell you after the next draft, why didn't we tell you earlier? That's what we're doing now. I'm almost.
Oh, wait a minute. Dave, did you have anything else?
Yes, I did. I just want to make one point. That the IDA was created in perpetuity by state law. Now, the issue with, and I know you're going to bring up Tom Montgomery and Tom Malone and Tom Niagara. When an IDA does not function, you have the CHP project that may not come to fruition. You've got other assets that the county will have to inherit and take over responsibility for. Let's just explain what happens. Someone has to take responsibility for a project. I'm not even sure if the language of CHP allows it to go anyplace else. So in consideration of CHP project, I think you need to keep those things in mind. We are here to listen. We would not have asked for comment if we didn't want the comment. We're trying to make it better. Our idea was to try and make it better from the process from the start, because we may see something that we didn't like in a project, but Tom may look at it differently. Don't they deserve that input up front before we dismiss something out of the IDA's hands that may be beneficial for the town? We were looking for it. We didn't start this just to do that. We started this to make it better. And I think the comments are great. I think realistically, we have to go through the process, get to March 1st. After March 1st, we will have a meeting, as I promised, to look at it, to talk about things and understand things, because there may be things that can't be worded a certain way because of legal. It has to be, recommending language doesn't work because Roger's not familiar with general municipal law, he's doing all the things to do Article 18A that governs it. So there's a lot in there. We have specialists in that regard to take care of that. advise us on to make sure that we can make sure it fits the comments, make sure it fits the needs of the IDA, the towns, and draft the language correctly. So, we ask for comments, we look at comments, we welcome the comments. There's more comments than gets this page. So I can't commit to, first of all, I can't commit to the boards you're listening, but there's other towns that may have comments that either compliment or change these.
Great,
That's some
this way you have our comments.
Yes.
I think Dana has a few more.
Yes, it's all about local control. We want local control. I talked a whole lot about Appendix N, you now call certain towns. In 2018, the IDA passed a resolution about solar projects. Solar projects, the IDA was not going to get involved in. 2018, you did this resolution. Now you have undone, didn't notify any towns. You have undone that. I want that back in to your policy where you say, and again, this is a living document, a town may join the 487 opt-out later on, because in order to opt out of 487, you have to do a local law. Schools opt out of 487, but they don't do laws, they do something else. I would like the UTEP to say, if you are a taxing jurisdiction that has opted out of 487, that the IDA would turn any of those abatements and pilots back to the town for local control, you're out of it. So basically, if you're not listed on Appendix N and you have not opted out of 487, then Dave, you've got a wide open field, run, go. But if you are on Appendix N and you did do a local law or a school did some sort of resolution to opt out of 487, you need to stay away from those two places unless they give you permission. Now, for example, I'm on Appendix N. There may be a town that's not on Appendix N, which says you can't do any pilot, any, without approval. So if I'm not on Appendix N, no, but I'm on 487, that's a big problem. If you said to my town, which is Appendix N town, that you wanted to do a solar project, the town would deny you permission because we opted out. We have a local law that says we opt out of 487. That's my reason to deny permission under Appendix N.
So can I answer that?
You probably would try to override it. You did Queensberry.
Can I answer that?
Go ahead.
The 2018 resolution, when the state changed 852, that overrode the policy. There was one. I've been looking at ways to evolve this in terms of it and make it a better policy. That first of all is that it's structured by not even talking about it. These are my ideas. I think it's sustainable. The first is that we would not pursue any pilots without permission anytime. So, anytime. So the first thing is, that's the part that we look at. In terms of, I haven't fleshed it all out yet. It's coming down, it's developing, evolving, as I told Dave Hogan, it's evolving. He made some points about sales and mortgage tax with solar. Never thought of it like. Ryan and I both agree. That's something that shouldn't be in the policy. So the reason why that I think we should do it, because in terms of pilot, you have a big project. I'm just using an example. The biggest project, I don't know how big it is compared to Easton, but 100 megawatt pipe field. So for example, you have opted back into 487 in 21, I think it was July 21. So anyhow, but I want to give an example. So say you're an out town. Say that you saw in a big project that there were a host benefit or other benefits available to you. You might come, so in order to take advantage of that, you have to opt back out, without that opt back in, which you could never get back, never opt out again if one law. Okay. So there may be benefits, host benefit packages that you consider more valuable to the town. In that case, it may be a benefit to the town to work with the IDA so they don't have to opt out because we can we can do that with the town's permission. So there are reasons why it is. There may be other things come down where it might make sense for renewable energy to work with the idea to help do some of those things. And I said, like we did the CHP, that's why I'm trying to drive though. So if there's both benefit bank to make difference to you or the school or educational, then we will look at that and work together doing that. So that's my high level formulation of what's doing, what I'm imagining to replace it, because it meets your needs, your concerns, meets everyone's concerns, but it does still allow someone who is a town who says, gee, we want to work together, this is the things we want in terms of both benefit package and everything else. Well, that's my reason.
Dave, you say quite often that basically the state new laws require you to do this. If you go back to, I included in all your packets, the IDA minutes of November and December 2021, your attorney says, New York State's new regulations encourage, not mandates, New York State's new regulations encourage IDAs to support renewable energy products, not make you. And then in December, she again says, Ms. Leah stated that it is not required to adopt a previously proposed resolution, which was November.
Because they took the old rule.
Did 852 come after December 2021?
Actually, came April 2021.
So that's before December, where she states that New York State said it's not required that you adopt a resolution. And it says New York State encourages the IDA. It's not required. Thank you for your time.
Anybody else?
Just one thing to add, because we're kind of the same thing with the Amish thing here, it's the same idea. We can't have a policy that goes against state law. I don't know the ins and outs on this one. I know it's the same with the Amish thing. We can't pass something that contradicts the state law. We can't have a policy. If we have a policy that contradicts the state, the IDA, the thing is it not being there. In the IDA,
52 is a law, but it's a statement of policy. What 852 says is, it's the policy of the state to encourage these things. So therefore, if you do it, we'll consider it to be a public purpose. It doesn't say you have to do anything. It just says, wouldn't it be unicorns and rainbows if all these things happen? And if you'd like to do them, you're not gonna get into trouble under the, is that a public purpose or not? So somebody would come along under the old system and say, wait a minute, IDAs are only for public purpose. And maybe I'm picking something out of my hat here. I'm not picking on solar. Maybe solar is not a public purpose. What 852 says is we're going to consider solar or renewable energy a public purpose so you don't get into trouble. That's all it says. It doesn't say you have to do it. It doesn't say you don't have to do it. It just says if you want to do it, you won't get into trouble on that public purpose, which is the whole point of an IDA, is to exist for a public purpose. So whenever 852 was passed, doesn't tell you to do anything. It says statement of policy and purposes of art. That's all it is. That's all it is a get out, a statement that says you're not going to get into trouble under the public purpose thing if you do these things. Not when you do these things, you must do these things, but if you want to do these things, you're not going to run afoul of that public purpose part, which IDAs were formed for to begin with. That's it. That's all 852 says.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Queensbury School Board 2016 said, we don't want to be part of any solar. The school board, Queensbury School Board said that. So if there's any confusion, I want that cleared up. They didn't want to be part of any solar because they didn't want to lose out on the taxes. 2016 school board, you look it up. And that's what the superintendent and the representative is trying to get across. They're not against solar happening. They don't want to participate though in losing out on taxes. So I wanted that clarified. They didn't want to do that then, but so anyway, I wanted to clarify.
I'm still trying to figure out what the heck kind of resolution it is.
That's what I thought.
Thank you. Yes.
So
It's easy, Roger. Everything on my
If you want me to turn that sheet into a resolution, I can do that. I can plagiarize with the rest of it. If you're happy about it.
You want a second? That's my motion. You want a second?
Second.
Any fruit, moved by Dana, seconded by Tim. Al, do you have a comment?
One thing that I'd like to add that Mr. O'Brien just touched on. is strongly encouraged from the county perspective. When we're talking about sales and mortgage tax forgiveness, be cognizant of ROI. I think there should be a metric. There's a significant, to me, as a fiscal officer, there's a significant difference between a business who's gonna take 50 jobs and reinvest, over the life of the business, maybe $100 million back to the community, and a solar farm that reinvests zero back in the community. So I think if you're gonna give sales tax forgiveness, please have some ROI metric that to give sales tax forgiveness, you're gambling that you're gonna get tenfold that back in the investment. There's no return on a solar farm. So I'm not pro or con solar. I'm looking strictly at the sales tax dollars. And if you're gonna give sales tax dollars away, the hope is to get more than what you gave away back. You'll never get that in a solar. So I think there should be some kind of ROI metric in a sales tax forgiveness. That's from the fiscal side.
Is that in your list of things?
Yes, back when I was talking about the jobs created, and I guess for that was part of that idea. Return on investment is the number of jobs. I don't know any other way of doing it. Maybe there are other ways, but that's the only way I thought of it.
Put on the bottom or some other form of return. Yeah, but you're giving them, whoever's writing that
Write it
down,
on
make a
the
little
bottom.
note of that. It's
So
Dana
wait, are you
amending it. That's
Are you
amending.
amending the
That's what I
motion?
have. I'll amend it for on Al's behalf.
And I'll second your amendment.
Okay, any further discussion on the amendment? Everybody understand? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Dan didn't vote.
I don't agree with his resolution, let alone the amendment.
Job.
I know, once you do it the first time, it's easier.
All this is recommendation.
It's just a recommendation,
Which is why we got the revolution.
because they asked for something.
Because they asked for the input.
They
They
asked
got the good point. You got 2.5 hours.
We want it right. You want it writing, yes. Why don't you write a letter with a recommendation?
I did.
Discussion in finance. They thought it was better to do a resolution. That's what I was told, so that's what we're
Why
recommending.
we're here.
Hey, who did it here?
So did the amendment carry or not carry?
Yes.
3 of you voted no, 3 voted yes. They didn't vote. So
Who are your
Oh,
yeses?
yeah.
Who are your yeses?
Dana, I, and Tim.
You need 4.
Right.
Who else is on this committee?
Nobody official.
I'll vote yes to get back to the resolution, because that's what I want to tell them. So there,
So there's 4 yeses on the amendment.
okay, so now you have public comment.
The amendment passes, so now we're back to the original resolution, and do we have discussion on the original resolution? Dan Shaw.
Well, I'm gonna summarize this, it's how I do things, so I understand what we're trying to accomplish here today. So I'm looking at cause and effect. What happened in the town of Queensbury with the solar project was what caused us all to be here today to discuss this and approve it, correct?
No,
No, that was the start of it, and if it hadn't voted, if they hadn't ignored what Queensbury had said, I think we'd all be happy and the little ducks float around in the pond.
I don't think so.
And, but now wait a minute. Going forward, what really has come to light for me, and this is what I don't like, it's gonna take a Philadelphia lawyer from every little town to read this, and I don't mean here today because we've all got the picture. I'm talking 10 years from now. And I think we've got this too complicated. I don't understand why it can't be so simple. They can adopt whatever policy they end up with, and all it has to say in there, which Roger could say it's there, is it the town that the project is in and the county that the project impacts has to agree to it. Simple as that.
Taxing jurisdiction, not town.
Agree to it. Why even get involved in that? Why won't you make it that simple?
That is very simple.
And then I don't care what they put in there, and Roger says it's not in there. then I'm saying we remove. Your idea?
Your idea is very good, it'll work, but they have to get rid of the discretion to deviate clause.
No, we still have to approve it. The final say is our county and town approval overrides everything else.
Don't you understand what discretion to deviate means? It's part of their policy.
It makes no difference if we say that. And I've got him agreeing with me, and that never happened.
If there's a deviation, it should come back, it should come back to the town.
Explain something to me.
Okay.
Can we just ask the lawyer, Roger, which way would it go? If both goes, hey, we got a lawyer,
So, not even Philadelphia.
not even close.
Not from Philadelphia. If you could, I can certainly much more easily write a resolution that says, our instructions to the IDA is no project that involves any kind of changes to the taxation will be done without approval of all the taxing jurisdictions.
How do you feel about that, man? It's simple.
Dan, I'm finished, you're not
No,
listening.
that's the end. That's the end. So whether it deviates or not, it can't be granted until whatever it is, whether it's a straight exemption or
Town board.
or a deviation from a straight exemption for whatever legally reasonable reason.
You agree
It
with
must have final approval by the taxing jurisdiction before it can be approved by the IDA.
That's right. Dan, you're a genius.
That's what you want to do. That's easy. Easy peasy. And then there's no appendices, there's no opt-in, there's no opt-out, there's no.
I know, because they got 35 pages of this.
Okay, but I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
The solar that's going into Queensbury is right now,
Yeah.
current is an enhanced pilot, correct? The requirements that the IDA has right now for enhanced pilot is that they must get approval from the town. They did not get approval and they did it anyway.
So
Right.
even though it didn't happen in our area and it's
So-
not part of the
Okay.
discussion.
So
it's
when
an
you say
example.
Roger puts in that any taxing jurisdiction must approve,
Right.
what if they do it anyway? That's what they did in Queensbury.
You
But this
remove
is
them
our
like
recommendation.
everybody has proposed. That's the solution. That's the
Right.
bottom line.
Okay.
So
The
this
ship
is
is,
I mean,
with the ship is sailed.
Right.
Like.
It's the same as your board of assessment review. If they do something wrong, your only thing is you can do is remove them later. It's
Oh,
already.
you can do.
Dana Hogan,
Roger just made a good point, though. The ship is sailed, Dan. So if the Borlek project in Fort Edward, they got a pretty good idea that we don't want the granted sales tax abatement. I would hope they would understand that by now. But if they make a decision to grant that, what then?
Well, we've already discussed with them. Right.
So all the-
And dissolve the IDA. On that one project, but we made it clear, that's our only option.
Big project.
It's our only option.
So that's why we're trying to get them to change all that language so that they don't. But that should be our solar policy. That's what.
Jay Skelly,
I just got a question for Roger. If we put that resolution in and they actually added it to their policy, at any point in time down the road, can they come back and say, well, but the state allows us to overrule all this, we can just go ahead and make a decision without the towns.
They could, I mean, that,
Even though they might have the wording in the policy.
Sure.
What
if you can vote.
That's how I
Policy is as good as the next vote.
The next board.
I think Dan's idea is very good, very simple, because they kind of say something like that in the current UTEP. If I can find it.
while you're looking, there's another hand up. What was the leader you said? Roseanne?
Fort Edward assessor. I do have a question about real property tax law.
One I'm getting stressed today.
It's not my area of expertise.
So I have a lot in this document that I want to just say, but for today, my question is on solar only. Because real property tax law, section 487, gives us a right to opt out of solar, which our county has done. Fort Edward has done, Village of Fort Edward has done, one of our 5 school districts has done so. Can you grant a real property tax exemption with the real property law and not give abatements for sales tax and for mortgage tax?
Yes.
You're right.
There's your problem right there.
Yes.
An exemption for real property tax law.
Right.
So it's taxes, not abatements on sales. tax.
Right, the idea has power to grant,
Real property.
concessions, I'm gonna call them concessions, on all kinds of things, real property taxes,
But you know-
mortgage taxes, sales taxes, whatever. Yeah, the
Yeah.
487 only has to do with real property
And if
taxes.
we're dealing as assessors with 487.
Right.
We're regulating the exemption for real property. That does not automatically guarantee that project abatement and sales. tax.
No, right. They have to go somewhere else to get that.
That's your point.
Right.
And that's what should be considered versus the IDA making that decision.
And that's why I'm saying that the resolution I'm proposing to write says no concessions of any kind and any will be made without the approval of the taxing jurisdiction. Right, so whether it's a mortgage tax, sales tax, real property tax, whatever, so if it's money, so nobody's gonna affect our revenue stream without our permission. Is the big nut, right? So wherever if you're affecting somebody else's revenue stream, right, you have to have that person's permission before you can affect their revenue stream. That's I think, Mr. Shaw's bottom line. So if you're don't let other people take money out of your pocket without asking them.
But you were talking.
Okay.
Solar, right?
I'm talking just solar, not all, not all.
But this resolution would apply to every single
That's fine.
thing. It's broad as broad. That's the language we're discussing. Anytime you're affecting somebody else's revenue stream, you have to ask them. They have to okay it.
So Roger, do I have to take, but we already voted on my motion.
Amendment.
No.
All right, so now we have a new amendment that, so I withdraw.
Withdraw your motion.
You had the amendment.
No, her amendment was voted on and approved.
So withdraw your motion.
I want to withdraw my motion, and then Dan, you're gonna make a motion
Mhm.
that any pilot has to be approved by that taxing jurisdiction.
Concession. Any concession affecting the revenue stream of another municipality or taxing entity has to be approved by that taxing entity.
I don't think it's a concession.
There.
I think it's an.
That's it.
You can
I'm
make
saying anything that
Okay, I
affects
just
somebody
did.
else.
All right, I withdraw my original motion. I think you got to withdraw your second.
We can't give it a second.
All right.
Dan has his motion on the floor, which mimics what Roger just said. Do we have a second? Is there any further discussion? Matt?
That includes the county, right? Doesn't know the taxing jurisdiction.
Great.
Yes.
And if I vote yes, can we end this and move on?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Unanimous.
Carried.
Good job, Dan. Why didn't you say that about 2 hours ago?
You should have started there.
Okay, thank you for coming to the meeting. I hope you understand the concerns.
It's far more educational.
Yep. Okay, next on our agenda is real property. Laura? Sit right up here and
You know, you take a new supervisor and read that.
Oh, I went blank on it. Oh,
This is more than.
yeah.
More than.
And then you-
With the down higher. Anyway.
No, it tells us that they should.
Okay, let's give our attention to Laura so we can move this meeting along. Boy,
Three things on the agenda. The first thing is overnight travel. I have a winter conference that happens from February 27th to March 1st. It's in Rough Road from NISAC. I go every year. It is less than 50 miles, so I need board approval to have an overnight. It is in my budget to attend. And I've been going the last 2 years.
moved by Dave. Do we have a second for Laura's overnight travel? Dan? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Carried. It was pretty unenthusiastic, but I guess we get to go. No? Okay.
Thank you, thank you. So the second thing I have is we had a parcel in the town of Argyle that we had talked about removing, putting the 1138 exemption on there. Since I put the information on the agenda, the property has sold, so I would like to pull this information until I can talk with Al and possibly the new owner and see where we sit with taxes or something on that property. Yes. Yep, so I'm not gonna bring that before you until I get more information. See what we want to do. We were waiting until the town and county bill came out so we could write off all the taxes, but we kind of changed ownership. I want to hold that. Okay. The last thing I wanted to talk about is assessment services. We've had some conversations on these. We supply assessment services for 4 towns in Washington County. Currently 4 towns in Washington County. And the cost of the cost services has been discussed. What had happened is we had multiple towns that wanted to get in, then some towns had decided not to. In the meantime, the $12 per parcel, which was our uniform amount that we were charging, had been put out to the towns that were currently in or coming in, based on the towns, everybody that wanted to be into the program. There've been multiple, we had a couple towns that now are not able to be, or they're not going to be in our program. I still recommend that we charge $12 a pound for the assessment services because that's what they were told when they were preparing their budgets.
What's the history? Like, could you refresh my memory on the history? When you say it's only $12, what would have been the actual cost?
The actual cost, I mean, today with the towns that are currently in the process.
Saying they've already done their budgets.
So maybe
13.
Can I just interrupt? So we had a meeting with all the towns that would be involved, so we were all getting the same information at the same time. Al was there, Melissa was there, several other supervisors were there at the time, and kind of the consensus that came out of the meeting was some of the values of the costs are very black and white, some of them are not so black and white. So the recommendation of that meeting was to do $12 this year to keep very good track of records over the next year. And then look at, because I believe what, 24 when all the supervisors were reappointed, 25 or 24. The assessors will be reappointed where we might have assessors missing and there'll have to be a bigger issue on what a cost is. So the recommendation out of the committee was to really pay attention to the actual cost this year and have some real black and white numbers to bring forward for the following year.
Okay, so
Jim?
that didn't necessarily answer my question. Sorry.
Oh, that was kind
So
of.
the question is, what should the cost have been? You're saying we're going to keep it, your recommendation is to keep it 12 because of the budget impact it would have on the 4 towns?
Right.
Okay, what should the number be?
Well, if we look at, it's different. If I look at the salaries of the 2 employees and the cell phone and the carpool, and the carpool is not used. I mean, that carpool is used for other things. And I can't track, we're not tracking mileage every day for every property that we go and see. So based on a general thing, it was $13.73.
So where does that extra money come from to pay for that?
So Al, you want to chime in with your total dollars that this will change it? What did you say?
9 grand.
8,500, 9 grand, something like that?
I don't have the paperwork, it was like $9,200 is the impact on the county budget.
If the gray
The
area numbers
variation
are
between the
higher.
12 and the actual. And the $13 number was if Flora doesn't get the dollar she applied for.
Right.
If she gets the dollar per parcel that she applied for, it was more in the 1280 range.
Yeah.
So 1273. 1273 might have been the number. It was the high 12s if she gets the dollar back per parcel, which we'll know soon if that's a real thing or
Hopefully
not.
so.
So it was the $13 without the revenue from the state, the 1273 with the revenue from the state. But that was the $9,200 impact was what I based is the impact on the county for 23's budget.
Thank you.
Tim?
I know this year, people have already done their budgets, probably. But I've been presented with information where that should be not $12, $22 plus. And Roseanne did I gave the information to Sam. She spelled it all out on the cost. So data, we think it's more like 22. But
With the 4 towns or the 2
But
towns?
with the 2 towns, it was 22.
So you have.
Go ahead.
That's cheap.
Go ahead.
Okay. So we currently have 4 towns that your county is doing assessing services for. Okay, so that's Cambridge, Fort Anne, Hebron, and Hartford.
And
No,
Hampton,
not
not Harvard,
Okay, I'm sorry, Hartford, Hampton. Hebron.
and Hampton, yeah.
Okay, so if you were working on the basis that in 2022, you had 1 part-time assessor and 1 data collector, both working about 24 hours a week. And if that cost you $20.94 per parcel with 4,400 parcels, how are you going to do 6,800 parcels for $12 a parcel?
They were not doing it for $13.75.
Right, yeah.
Because you're gonna get
And
a
it's-
dollar in state aid if you've not met your equalization rate quotas that you're supposed to be making your state.
Well, the state,
Your
no, the
state
state, no, the state aid was for shared, was for, services provided. Like a shared services
So
provided,
that was a separate grant.
a separate, yeah, it's a, you can get, yes, yeah.
The total cost of salary and fringe is 91,000 divided by 6,800 parcels is 1332. I got their salary and fringe.
Salary.
Salary and fringe was 91,000 divided by 6,800 parcels is 1333. I have the number.
Okay, so I've got, if it costs you $20.94 per parcel to do 4,400 parcels. That's what you got. That's what you told for.
2022.
2022. How are you doing 62 parcels for $12 a parcel? That's just cover the increase of what your budget already was, so 2 new employees, is that correct?
No, not on 2 new employees, so there's no new.
From last year to this year, from 2 years ago to this year. You hired a part-time assessor.
Right.
And a data collector.
And a data collector, but the data collector is not full-time assessment services.
It's only 30% per time.
35%, 35%.
So you're doing 2 towns for $12 a parcel, so the increase in carrying in retirement for the employees that are now going full-time is $9,000, is that what you said? Yeah.
The difference between the 12 and the actual cost is the 9,200.
Because there's more parcels, so it's divided among a bigger number.
That doesn't make sense.
She's not adding additional staff. That's what she said.
I think you're looking at
Part-time to full-time for that.
The part-time to full-time and give
Right.
benefits.
but they're not full-time in this other town assessment. They have job applications within the Office of Real Property besides. They're not
For the
just,
data collector.
right, they're just not
So
working
your
for the
data
4
collector is
towns.
part-time in which town?
Well, no, the
No.
data collector in my office is a full-time employee, but they only designate 35% of their time for data collection.
45%.
34, 35.
33.
Is going to the
34%.
4 towns.
Right, yeah,
Well,
for this year. I mean, that can vary, and that's the problem with the whole process is how much data collection needs to be done in each town.
so the county assessor you hired is gonna be in 4 different towns.
Yep.
At least 1 day a week.
Yes, right now, currently.
Okay, so who's gonna do clerk work? And those-
There is no clerk work. There is no
Are you
clerk.
gonna
The
send
assessors.
someone from the county, real property
Nope.
department to do clerk?
Nope,
So who's
the
gonna do
assessors,
pensions?
the assessors in the town one day a week.
So the assessor's gonna do everything in the town of 40 and 3,283 parcels in 1 day.
Well, they'll also have Thursdays where they can work on other things too. So they're there 5 days a week.
Well, I'm just not certain that you can do 4 towns, 6,800 parcels with 1 full-time assessor and 1 part-time data collector. And only charge $12 per parcel, or $13.73 if you give your dollars something and say that. Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, we in our town, we only had an assessor 1 day a week for 6 hours.
And 2 of the towns that we took, well, one of the towns we took on didn't even have any office hours prior, and the other town only had like 3 hours part-time. Not all assessors, as you know, are in the office all day. And but they work more than their
But they work
3 hours, yeah.
So is the county assessor, when they're not in one of these 4 towns, gonna be here in the county?
Yeah.
I'm still very confused about the price per parcel. I don't think it's covering contractuals if you have to hire outside.
Contractuals
are always,
But they shouldn't be, because it's a town, assessing of a town function.
right, no, I meant ours in the town. The town is, yeah,
To the appraisal.
The contract. the contracted stuff is through the
Your
town.
attorney will take care of all the small
Yep.
claims and all of that. So it's really just taking the function of assessing, which is data collection, property record cards, evaluation.
Yep.
And doing that for $12 a person. Not sure it's gonna work.
Jim Nolan?
That's all I gotta say.
Regardless of the additional cost that this is going to cost the county when you see.
Yeah.
That money is being subsidized by the towns that have hired their own assessors, do their own assessment. To me, that's a
Dave?
Back when this first came up, I don't remember the year, the resolution, 2020. The resolution stated that it would be budget neutral. So now we're talking about changing the resolution passed by the full board to pick up some of the costs. So we'll have to go back and have a whole resolution, back to the full board to change that to this. And I gotta tell you, I don't like paying extra from what we originally sort of quoted. But I believe in it. I believe it should be budgeted for the county.
That's,
And, you know, if you remember back, one other thing, if you remember back when we did this global assessment, the county picked up an overage from that multi-town assessment. 6 towns. We picked it up. All the town picks up the delta because the towns were told X number of dollars.
Yep.
For partial services. So there is precedent. However, there is also precedent. We passed a resolution that we budgeted. And the contracts were signed, as I understand it, contrary to the budget neutral.
so we agreed at the meeting that it needed to be that some of the numbers were opinions or assumptions or possibilities. And so that's why we, in the little group meeting we had, the recommendation was to cross the Ts, dot the Is, find out exactly what the true costs are for this year, and then bring back that information so you can say, well, I was wrong. Data collectors actually only working 18% of the time, or I was wrong. Data collectors actually in there 80% of the time, or mileage is way more.
Right.
I mean, on all the information you get in your town, it says you can call that assessor anytime. So you have no idea. There might be a chance that the assessor is working in Fort Ann and spending half the day on 2 problems in Hebron. So it's kind of hard to tell all that. So that's why the recommendation was to actually track, because it was beforehand, every time it was brought up, $12 coverage it, $12 coverage it. So we can get a real number and say, oh yeah, well, carpool ended up only being $500, but data collector ended up being 60%. So we'll have real numbers after the end of this year to actually know, not just assumptions and estimates.
So if that's the case, we're gonna have real numbers into this year.
Right.
We go back and then re-levy to the towns that paid $12, and it's $12.73. Re-levy is part of it, make it fair and meet our resolution in place.
I can do that. You already passed the next.
You already
budget.
passed it, right, yeah. It's got it, you know.
You can add it in the budget number.
Duke County, we all pay extras at the end.
Dan,
Yeah,
you have words of wisdom last subject. Come on.
I sat in on this meeting, although it didn't impact me. And we went through all the discussion that we're going through now. And the thing of it is, it impacts small towns. And Cassie's got a small town, I've got one, but it's not impacting me. But the reval would have impacted me, and I agree with Sam, look, at the time, we did the best we could do as far as what we thought the costs were. And it was promised, it was no cost to the towns with the reval. And we had to write off what, $65,000 to cover that. Now, as Alan said, there's $9,200 of the shortfall. I say if you need a budget amendment to recognize that, to cover that shortfall, I'll make that. But I mean, we did the best we could do. She had a contract in place. In good faith, she entered into it. Why are we nitpicking on this? I mean, you know that, Dave, as much as anybody else. I mean, let's, if we recognize it $60 or $9,200, let's agree to write it off or whatever you have to do. I tell you, there's a magnifying glass on this coming up by this fall budget time.
That's
We're gonna
what we
know what that
discussed.
number is, and it will be budget neutral, but this is the best we got. I mean, it is 12:15. We've been beating dead horses all morning long.
Danny, do you have another comment?
Yeah, Laura, did I hear you say correctly, it's unfair to the towns now that their budgets are set,
Well, because the contract's.
right?
Laura did a present, so from my board's perspective, and it's awkward because I'm the chair
Well,
of
the
the
contract-
committee, plus it was affected one of my towns, so that is an awkward position to be sitting in. But yes, Laura presented to my town board as a $12 cost,
In light
so
of
she
what
was
Mr.
there.
Nolan just said, that's not fair either.
Right, but like Dan and I can also, it's not fair here, it's not fair there. We paid code enforcement forever and ever, and we had our own code enforcement officer, so really our town was still paying in for code enforcement, even though we were additionally paying the code enforcement officer. So
I can still say that.
I can't, Dan can still say it, but there's little instances like that all over the county. Our board did not intend to get something unfairly, but that was the presentation we received.
But so that 9,600 only includes wages and benefits, correct? It includes nothing else.
The carpool, the phones, they're in that number.
It's not in that.
No, it
is.
It's all in that number.
Carpool.
Those are the direct costs that she was aware of.
The thing with the carpool is a monthly fee that we pay, and it may not be used 100%. I mean, we may not use 100% of that carpool billing, but we still got to pay that monthly billing for carpool. So say next
Or it goes
month,
on your overnight trip.
right?
There goes car.
Well, I'll take my own car.
But I mean.
But there's other things that factor in. We have to pay a monthly carpool amount, and that's what's factored into this dollar amount. We may not use that much. And of course, carpool's going up. You guys just wrote that in. Well, that'll be going up. So that cost will have to be.
But yes, it was, Al
Yes.
did have
Yeah.
all kinds of little additional costs. It's just not payroll. It was car, phone.
Carpool, phone, and fringe and salary.
Based on the total cost that were presented of 93,812, it's 1333 a parcel without state aid, 1273 a parcel with state aid. The delta to the county is 9,087 without state aid, 4,987 with state aid. Those are the numbers. If that helps.
Right.
There's one other way to look at that, because we can figure out. Once we get to budget time, we can figure out what the number is gonna be going forward somewhat. Still, there's no way for it to be accurate.
Right, with the
But it's
black
like
and
all
white
the other
tracking
budget
this
numbers,
year.
maybe that. But we can actually take whatever that estimated guess is and add what the shortfall is to it and charge the towns then. Instead of trying to bill them for something they didn't have budgeted, the new rate would reflect that. You could do it that way.
Al,
Another thing you could consider for the 2024 round of contracts is something like we do with the SRO contract with the schools. We true up at the end of the contract. So we have a precedent, we do that with the school resource officers already. We say you're gonna pay X amount of dollars and you get these amount of hours. And what I do is I get a report from the sheriff's department at the end of the year. These were the actual costs for that officer, uniforms, time, and sometimes we charge the school, and sometimes we have to send money back to school. There's a true up at the end of those contracts, if that makes any sense in this.
I thought that's what most of this was supposed to be. Right.
Okay, I see that world functioning just fine.
I understand that, but I would want to see the numbers, the way they were presented to us were estimate was the word used. Our best guess were the words used. I want to see black and white, which is why the whole group that was sitting, like Dan said we wanted to take a hard look at this year, because $12 was the number right up until the very end of the year where it was challenged. So this is our way of checking it.
So that's a good question to Laura. So by potentially August or September, we should know what those costs are, because most of your assessment work is done between January and July or August.
Yeah.
Other than that, that's all.
Right, yeah.
Other than office
Yeah,
hours,
right.
But you should be able to connect those costs out pretty closely. So why wouldn't we be able to come someplace
Right.
in August, September, and say, here is the amount, here's the delta? So we know in the towns what we have the budget for.
And that's what I would plan on doing, because I would want to let you know prior to your budget meetings and your tentative
And
budget.
that is what the discussion is. The
That-
discussion is, what are we gonna do for the towns
Well,
that were charged $12? And they agreed to it, it's in their budget. Are we going to cover it? We covered what you said. We're gonna, why don't we deal with this now?
But we go back to the resolution which those contracts don't agree with. The resolution passed by the full board was that be budget neutral to the town, to the county.
Yep,
That's what it says.
right. And I know,
$12 is not budget neutral.
It never was.
but it was presented to her as budget neutral at $12, and she put it in her budget. And you're not the only one.
Right, I'm not doing it now, right? The
Right,
same
so
contract was
the
signed.
thing is that, let's deal with
Oh,
that.
right. And the other additional things that came out of that meeting is we need to get a more uniform date, because right now the contracts won't be signed, they'll be signed at random intervals across the years. So we need to work on that, because, what are you gonna do now? Because Sam's got a 12-year, not to throw you under the bus, Sam, but it's part of it. Now, or Dan has a 3-year contract for your $12. Because that's what it was at the time we were told. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, for the town of Fort Anne, okay, and I said from the beginning of this, when we had the first
You're
conversation,
rich.
they didn't ask me to hold up on sending any more contracts. I just signed back in March, but that's not a deal with Fort Anne, okay? We have more breakage in our budget because we pay, our assessments are up to 3 or 4 in the county. All right, so we'll have some breakage in ours and we can actually handle it, okay? But I think that we are setting ourselves up because just like what's going to happen in the EMS sustainability, we're gonna have the same thing happen with assessors down the road. So the decisions we make today, you're gonna find it as they retire out, as they leave, it's gonna be hard to find anybody to replace them. So people, well, they're not on the market out there. Nobody wants to be assessors.
Laura has reported out meeting after meeting after meeting that assessors statewide are unavailable. Go ahead.
What I'm asking for is the 4 towns that the county is now undertaking to take their duties over at the county level. Did they advertise for new assessors? And if so, what was the result? Argyle advertised and they had 4 applicants. So I can't, and 3 of them are certified assessors. So I can't believe that there's not people out there who would go from Warren County, Washington County, and Saratoga County, pick up other towns if they were offered maybe $12 a parcel now.
So back in that, another great idea of the state was shared services. So my town was trying to be nice and we said, okay, our assessor got done. We'll jump on the shared services bandwagon and we'll try a shared services program. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing a shared services program with the state, but that's how we ended up here.
But why
But
is
it's
the town advertising for an assessor to be a town function and do it within the town?
Because we were encouraged to do a shared services program and the town saw a chance, which is the whole reason. we went. But that's just your opinion and that's just how it happened. But it, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, so we had the situation, Ronnie passed away in town laundry, and we went through the process. I'm over here just like gazing off because I went through this whole process with Laura and I completely understood it. And I presented it to my town and the town people came out and said, we don't want it at the county, we want to control it in the town. So I agree, you gotta put it in front of the town people, you gotta emphasize it. We ended up, as a result, we had 2 people contest for a race last year that we didn't think anybody was gonna contest for a race. We were gonna go to appointed, and we had looked at county, and, people came out of the woodwork when it came down to. So.
After the rebound.
Well, there's 6 towns that did not rebound, so.
Matt?
Is this informational or is there supposed to be a motion coming out here to do something?
Motion to do something, we need to do contracts.
Yeah, we have money, so we're still have the check written, we can't send it in the pay.
So recount contracts.
Go ahead,
We have
Martha.
one signed contract right now, right? That's for the town of Fort Anne.
Town of 40, and that
We
goes
have-
through February of 20.
The town of Cambridge has received their contract with the
Yeah.
$12 amount, but it's not
Yeah.
signed yet.
We signed it.
You signed it, but it's not signed.
Not signed by the chair.
And then we have 2 other contracts that have not gone out yet, so we need a dollar amount to put on those contracts.
Hampton signed his, I have a signed copy of Hampton back, but it's not signed by the chair.
For $12?
Yeah.
I didn't know that went out, okay.
Yeah, they all went out.
They all went out. We all.
They all
I didn't
got
sign mine because I knew this was gonna be.
So your board approved it.
Are you one of the
Board
four?
approved it.
Are you one of the four?
But the board approved it.
I was waiting to get the final number.
I think the estimate was $12 a parcel. And with state aid, it's $12.37.
$12.73.
That's a pretty darn good estimate, if you ask me. Towns pay to the county what we owe on very different incidentals. It's called due county. Could you figure out what that amount is? And then at the end of the year, like you give something to Hartford, a lot of that is real property differences. Could you do it through due county and then the towns pay what they, as per the resolution that Dave refers to? Can we figure that out or do we have to figure it out in the future? You can't figure it out now?
I'm not an attorney, and I don't play one on TV, but I think there should be an agreement in the contracts, because that Duke County is a factor of taxation in this area.
Well, who wrote the contract that knew about that resolution that where the county would be made whole?
I went back because I asked Debbie for that resolution, because I knew there's that one out there. I wasn't quite sure what it said. She forwarded it to me, like, she forwarded it to Cassie and other people.
Back when we were talking about doing this, we said, okay, we'll do it as long as the county is.
Right.
The original estimate was incorrect. It was too low. For 2022 to 2023, you incurred a cost of about $28,000. 22 to 23, you guys are gonna pay about 30,000. For 22 to 23, it is budget neutral. Prior to that, it was not budget neutral, and you're trying to catch up. That's just information. But for this year, it is budget neutral. Not just.
It's not.
90.
For this year, for 22 to 23, the additional amount of expense to Laura is $28,000. Right, going from part-time to full-time.
No.
The increase to the county is covered by the two new towns.
Yes, that's my.
Yeah, oh,
For this year, for this photograph.
Yeah.
Delta
Video,
21 to 22 Delta.
Yeah.
Is covered by the two new towns. If that's what you're saying.
That's all I was trying to think.
Right.
The
They're trying to
problem,
work in the right direction.
the problem is historical, it was never 12.
There.
Right. Where we are is covered by the two new towns. The increase in the budget is covered. The past cost was not. That's the problem.
So that's where we come
So
from.
the
Doing the
informational, or we can pass
evaluation.
the resolution.
Yep, and we need something to pass
Yeah,
with
right,
the
chairman
chairman of the
sign.
board can sign, chairman of the board can sign. Sorry.
Well,
My contract was back of the 1st of October, so I'm sitting there with a check I'm trying to pay for.
just for resolution to let the
Chairman
chairman
to sign.
to sign the
Chairman sign.
$12 contract.
Yes.
Have you signed the other ones?
Yeah. You signed it, well, Sam's got one already signed, right?
His was 2
So has the
years ago.
authorization already happened?
It did.
We got Dr. Chairman already mentioned that, well, there's, Jim did a presentation, and that's what we were talking about, that. That's what I'm saying, no, but it has a greater effect on a smaller town than it does on us, so that's very good.
You guys, see, I've already had months of service because my contract ran out on 1st of October. Because the way we did it as a shared service, picked up at the new appointment time of the
Right, because
assessor.
her started.
I'm sitting,
Do we
I'm
need
holding on my
to-
check.
Let him authorize the.
We've been signing them originally, no.
Okay, so there's no action we need
The
to take.
last presentation, the board asked the chairman to not sign any contracts, so this was resolved.
Until you have a presentation.
So I did say to you.
We're saying
Now
no
we've had
because
the
we.
presentations. If we're happy, you can sign them.
I guess the resolution would be to override the previous one, letting him sign it and telling him not to sign it. If that's what you want to do.
Right, we need to have the contract signed so we can pay.
Because the authorization exists. At the last meeting, the committee said, please don't use your authorization until we have a presentation. We've now had the presentation. So unless there's some further direction to the chairman to not sign them, he's authorized to sign them.
Check is in there. as soon as
Bob,
it's
is that
signed.
clear what you're at?
Sitting there written. She wanted to.
Still, there's no motion coming at the moment.
Okay.
Unless you want to tell him to not sign.
So going forward, you're gonna, like, say, the next 6 months, you're gonna pay attention.
Yes.
So we get a
There's so many
real-
different factors.
There should be, you know, like I
Yeah.
spent this much time there, I
Yeah.
spent this much time
Logging.
doing this.
It'll be logging, it'll be miles, it'll be, you know, we do some mileage with the county car, but not 100%. So it'll be
We're not gonna charge us for logging.
for the what?
Logging.
Logging time.
It's.
You should have to pay for the Saturdays.
Okay. So one other thing I did have is if your town, and I know,
Saying that we did to cover the short.
one
We
of
know
the,
that it'll figure itself out at the end of the year. Dan. Go ahead, Laura, let's.
one
finish
other
up.
thing I have is if your town board
Dan,
passes, your town board passes a local law for the volunteer firemen and the EMS. You know, I'm sure your assessor will send in the information, but just make sure we have that prior to March 1, because that's tax status.
I don't think there are any volunteer EMS. They're all corporations and they're paid. There is.
Are they all paid now?
I think there's no such thing as a volunteer.
No, no, no.
I was gonna say.
PBRS,
No, 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 the company.
PBRS has volunteers.
Yeah.
It's just
They
a
have
volunteer
volunteer- have to be
person.
a volunteer EMS company.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, it's not just a few.
Ours never changed from being what it originally was. They just pay people to work there. Same, this is the same corporate thing you file.
And I don't think that they would qualify for this exemption like volunteer fire companies, they're all volunteers.
Yeah, EMS would too.
Just quickly, was there a form that the assessor is gonna give us to give the firemen to apply for?
There's an application form, real property tax law.
Can you send it to us, please?
Yep.
As well as the law passed by.
Mhm.
No, when we heard.
That's
it
an
originally-
application form that has to be into the local assessor prior to March 1.
When we heard this originally, it was explained that the county had to pass that exemption here for the towns.
Nope. The county has to pass it for the county level.
Just.
And I don't have any
So we're not
numbers.
waiting for the
Right.
county.
No.
We can go ahead.
Towns
and
can
do
go
it.
ahead and do it by local law, but I don't have figures. You guys at the county usually want to know what the impact is. I got the rosters from personnel. I've looked at some of the stuff. The rosters are old. So in order for me to calculate a good number.
So to clarify that, you could choose anywhere between 2 and 5 years being a volunteer.
Yep,
You had your choice
and up to 10%.
and up to 10%.
Yep.
And all this does is shift
The tax
a
burden.
minimal amount of tax
Right.
from the volunteer
Yeah.
to somebody else.
Yeah.
To everybody else.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
I
other
figured-
people get other exemptions too, so I mean, it just.
They've already got that.
Yeah, it just convolutes it.
I figured it out in Hartford's tax rate, a $200,000 parcel. It would be $94 less that they pay in taxes.
Same as I got.
And I talked to Laura about this yesterday because I misread the law where it says you have to wait 3 years from the date of the act. That was language from 1999. Wasn't from current. So if you adopt your law, say in February, which Hartford may do, it's prior to the March closing, so it would allow these firefighters to take their exemption like very soon, maybe the next school tax.
Yeah, and there's other criteria
Jim?
also.
This year.
School tax.
Wrong, but there currently is a $200 tax credit.
Yes, income tax credit.
Correct.
Mhm.
And they have to choose one or the other.
Correct.
So going back to your example, David, don't take a tax credit. It's $200.
They're gonna save 94 on their taxes or take a total.
There's one firefighter in Hartford. He's assessed for like 40,000, for him it's like $19. So I didn't know it was one or the other.
There's also a bill out there right now, raising it to $500.
Well,
Right,
there's
yeah.
also a discrepancy in the Assembly and the Senate that they passed it to do both. And they rewrote it only one or the other.
Right.
So it's, this is to be continued, but I think we can move forward at the town level and pass whatever we're gonna do and we'll find out.
Okay, if you have any other further questions on that, you can ask Laura. We're gonna let Matt Jones move you out of the chair. Bob, you wanna wait a minute, so we can come up and.
I'm making motion to approve whatever Matt wants.
Because I figured you guys would get yourself out.
Okay, we do have divided attention to Matt.
Organized.
First up,
All right, first thing is the parks budget, which is Lauderdale. I just need to transfer money from point 2 to point 4.
Second.
moved by Dave, seconded by Tim. Any discussion?
Ropes and buoys.
Jim?
I had a question because I brought it up in audit. How often do ropes and buoys get replaced?
First time since I've been here.
Okay,
That we've done the whole shop, maybe 1 or 2 here or there, but first time. The reason we have that in our budget, but due to the purchasing rules of having point 2 and point 4 equipment on each, we just had it in the wrong one, so it's barely.
It's the sunlight that breaks them down, ultraviolet light.
Okay, any further pertinent discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Carried. Next up,
Is the main complex fire alarm system, which is on the capital plan. The first step is to have it engineered, and I have a proposal of $9,100 from ME Engineering to start the engineering on the fire system.
moved by Dave, seconded by Tim. Any further discussion?
Yep.
Al,
You're moving a resolution to finance because there'll be a budget amendment for capital. Plan. Just for
that's
clarity.
what you guys are doing?
That's what I said.
Okay,
That's what I heard you say.
all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Everything's going good?
Upgrade, I think this will be easy, but I forgot.
you said the wrong.
Nope, it's just an email from, oh, here we go. Pass it down. I mean, get enough of them?
Yeah.
Got my-
Yeah, you saw it.
I saw it. I'll commit.
Yeah, that's right. It's,
Okay, give your attention. Dan,
just an email from the Cambridge Central School. They have, their science class. They're asking us for really assistance to use our park to launch a floating classroom to do water quality tests. I think it's a great idea. I just need your support to do it within the Department of Health regulations that we are operating under at the Bark and Beach. So as long as the Department of Health lets us do everything there and we're following the rules, I don't see a reason why.
moved by Dave, seconded by Tim. Discussion?
Yes, since it's a different entity being schools, do we have to have some agreement with them written account that Roger would have to write?
I can work on that when I find out from the Department of Health and him, you know, hey, what the whole thing is, if there's a need for understanding, you know, that they sign off. I can.
Well, I'm thinking the whole harm.
Yeah, they're probably liability.
Additionally insured.
Sure.
I just want to see what they're doing.
Right, but being covered for insurance is a big thing.
Right.
Okay.
Now, if somebody gets hurt on that during school hours, it has no impact on the county?
That's the stuff I want to research, Dan.
Okay.
So I brought
Well,
this, so you guys, I just got this the other day, so I haven't talked to him personally yet.
The short answer is we're all getting sued no matter what.
All in favor of encouraging this project? Aye.
I know, I saw that. That might be a good
Carried.
application of solar.
The next update is, we just signed the contract to start the construction on the jail roof. So I think you'll start seeing that construction April, as long as materials are available. If not, I would say May, June at the latest, but
So on good days of sunroofs.
that's right. Putting all the glass up there.
Melissa's getting nervous because I'm fooling with him. I never know that, right? I don't-
Good morning, because you're next, Melissa.
I never had that. I don't think so. Go ahead.
Really, I believe for buildings and grounds. We also are closing the land deal and Middle Falls for the CPW this week, so, or next tomorrow. He needs to be here.
Yeah.
That's it. The last thing I think is I need to just bring up, and this is gonna be more a health topic, is the discussion on how we are going to pay for the barns. Fort, I know, Fort in Middle Falls, but it has to happen now because he's gonna need some direction of how, right? For
So
your-
I need two things from you at the next finance meeting. I'm gonna need a borrowing resolution, and I'm gonna need a authorization for me to sign an agreement with the town of Fort Ann, because we found out from our bond council that we can borrow the money, and through an agreement with the town, we can share the payments as they come due. That must be a fair, I wasn't aware of that. We've discussed it with bond council, so. Right now, it looks like we're gonna have, well, after Friday, we now have $6 million in that project. So I kind of need to know the number. Is it 10? Is it 15? So we need to get the bond resolution in place, because in March, our BAN renews. And rather than go through another whole set of borrowing, I would work with Matt on his cash flows for the next 12 months and begin that process, but I can't begin that process without a borrowing resolution in place. So in order to have that in time for the official statement, which precedes the actual borrowing, I would need that in the next finance. So whether it's 5, 10, 15, whatever the number you want to put on there, I'm okay with, but I need a number to begin the process.
So can you clarify if that's town money or county money that's being borrowed? It's through what?
So the authorization would have to be for both. So if you're gonna pay, say, there's $6 million in the project, and Matt feels that's enough to completely pay cash for Middle Falls. And the Fort Ann project, we're looking at, say, 10 million for conversations.
Yeah.
The authorization would have to be for the whole 10 million, even though 6 million of it is coming back, because we're a 60-40 split on that one. So our authorization would have to be for the whole thing, even though some of it is coming back through an agreement. Does that answer your question?
Well, I think
What do you need from this committee? Just to send it to finance?
Yeah, I need a resolution to finance for the bonding authority and for me to authorize the intermunicipal agreement.
Move it.
Second.
Moved by Matt, seconded by Tim. Any other discussion?
I'm thinking
Question?
10 million is the number I want to throw in, but
What did you say,
Dan,
what number?
10.
My question is, what kind of, interest is on the bond? Do you got, if you borrow?
So I reached out to bond counsel yesterday. She's getting rates between 3.2 and 3.5.
That's variable each year, right? Is that a BAN?
As a BAN, it's going to change, yes. You can remember a couple of years ago, we were at 0.75, so it's different.
Can you have a fixed term?
Only if we go long term.
Can't do fixed term for 5 years?
The BANs are a 1 year.
No, not a BAN, an SIB, I think they're called. Statutory, where you pay a fixed amount for X number of years.
So I'll have to see what's available to the county. We normally either do bands or bonds. Those are usually the two vehicles that the county uses. I have to talk to her anyway, because sewer district's gonna be coming to you with an ask as well. So I've got some questions about his debt. So I'll be on the phone with her anyway, and I can see if there are other vehicles.
This is a big project. Get a pilot on this.
You
don't pay-
Not
you
pay
don't
this, I don't say.
Man,
Okay. Any further discussion?
They were all retained.
All in
They were all
favor,
retained.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
There's no other questions for me?
Leave that.
Presentation at the board meeting.
Yeah.
I've heard no more about that. Some of those pictures were concerning.
Sure.
Did that get addressed or are we?
Some of those items were already addressed, in our yearly thing. The roofs right now that are looking rough shape don't leak, but we've already had the material list for next year to replace them within our budget. So every year, our budget.
Did the
we
boat
fix
get
certain
looked
things.
over?
I heard about the boat for the first time today. So
It's a big ice cube tray.
that's
Yeah,
what.
that'll tear the seams out. a little.
Oh, sure.
Right.
And I'm not saying, whether we got.
So it was
Yeah,
addressed.
yes.
All I know it's addressed.
The stuff was addressed before the meeting. It was addressed in November. So,
Even the boat.
boat, I just found.
I know that wasn't done in November. I said, well, what
I
did
spoke to him about the boat today. I said, can you flip it over so that on a sunny day, a little bit of ice might come out, so it doesn't keep
Yeah.
pressing on the seat.
That's disappointing to me to hear that. I don't go up every week and look at stuff, and
And it still is a public park, so
Thank you, man.
somebody may have just took the boat out boating when we weren't there, who knows? I don't really know that. I hope my guys don't leave it like that, but we have had discussions internally about, keeping the park. And obviously, if there's some bigger stuff, I'll be bringing it to you, to see what we can do with it.
Okay. See you later. Enjoy your lunch while we sit here. No pressure.
It's a lot of pressure because I have handouts.
Yeah.
I've had enough handouts and I apologize.
Experience.
We're all worn out. We're gonna say second and then people.
Different. They're-
These guys.
So I have.
Okay, please give your attention and let that shit start.
Go ahead, Melissa.
So there's are some items that have come up recently, that I wanted to bring to your attention and some recommendations for consideration. I've given you, copies of the handbook. I don't know if you're familiar with the benefits that employees currently get. There was a change that was effective October 1st of 2009, and it reduced the number of sick days, the floating holiday, and the number of vacation days that an employee is allowed to receive. Okay, that's for the date of hire, October 1st, 2009 going forward. The CSEA contract reflects the same change, reducing those benefits, but the effective date is January 1st, 2012. So what has recently come to my attention from department heads as well as employees that have started date of hire between October of 2009 and January of 2012 that have gone from a CSEA position to a non-union position. They actually go from having, for instance, a holiday. Now, because they've gone to a non-union position, they don't get that holiday anymore. So they basically are eligible to receive the same amount of benefit days that they had received prior to taking the new position. Sometimes, in actually a lot of cases, those are promotional positions. So in the case that was brought to me, it's actually an employee that took a promotion and all of a sudden is not able to receive the same amount of vacation days, doesn't receive a holiday, and also receives 2 less sick days a year. So what I would like to do is change the employee handbook effective date for date of hire to reflect the same that's in the CSEA contract, January 1st, 2012. So that those 2 dates match, so we don't have that period where employees are falling through the cracks and losing those benefits. And I would like to make the change effective the anniversary date, that employee's next anniversary date, not do anything retro.
You're so special, we're getting you in stereo.
So I'm not looking to do anything going back, but I would like to have it reflected in their next anniversary date if you allow that handbook change. And if so, that would go to the personnel committee with a change to the handbook for that committee to review.
Move it.
Second.
Any further discussion? Dan?
Is there going to be an increased cost to the county taxpayer?
There is not.
No increased cost.
No. The only thing that it's going to do, it's going to give those employees that are now non-union those extra days off, right? So, but the only employees or departments that there could be a cost to are the 24/7 departments. So it'd be public safety, which
So there
does
is
not
a
apply. Well, this doesn't apply to them.
Oh, it does.
No, because they're union. And then, of course, the law enforcement center, but they're not non-union either.
The 3
So,
affected are all unions, so
yeah.
they're not affected.
So there
Okay,
should not be
thank
any
you.
cost other than just people not being here.
Because you're not gonna pay anything more than what was in the schedule to pay them.
You're just matching that you did CSEA.
Yes, and it's a
But
very
only-
small amount.
Just being
The
consistent.
only
The unwritten
financial
policy.
impact would be at 911, sheriff and jail.
which
But
is-
because they're under 3 separate union contracts, they would not be included in this.
And you still have a question, Dana, or was it answered?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
The second item I had, the accumulation of sick time currently. Lunch.
I think they're being nice to you, but.
Currently, the employee handbook states that an employee maxes out at 205 days of sick time. So if you're an employee that's been here for a long length of time and you have had very good attendance, because you have to earn that many sick days, and it takes quite a long time to get there, you actually don't accumulate any more sick days. So it'll go into your bucket to use during that year. If you still have great attendance, you don't use those, we just take them away from you. We don't allow those to accumulate. So there have been employees over several years that have stated to me that they feel like they're losing a benefit. Because here they've been here for 20 years, they've maxed it out, and all of a sudden they're not receiving the sick days like everyone else is receiving.
That's common. To limit.
I don't know what the benefit is, and I talked to the treasurer as well and the county attorney to try to figure out what the benefit to the county is to limit those days. It would not change the amount of days that we actually pay out when you leave. It doesn't change the amount of days that we would report to the retirement system, so you wouldn't receive any more credit there. It's just the days that you would have in your bucket if God forbid there is some kind of sickness that keeps you out of work for an extended period of time. You'll have those sick days to be able to receive
But
pay.
you would then go under short-term disability, would you not?
If you maximize and use all of your.
So they make
sick
you use
days.
your sick time first.
Yes. And there's a cost to us if employees go out on disability as well. Where hopefully, if you have your sick time, it's like an insurance policy, hopefully you don't use them. I mean, that's.
205 days is a lot of days.
When you're rewarding the people that didn't use it, what you're doing.
So
And
if they
there's
were
not
to have,
many, honestly. I mean, that's. You
They
have
have
really
to-
good attendance and you've been here for a really long time. If you are one of those employees that gets to that point.
What's the maximum payout when you leave the county employee?
Pay for 10 days?
25% of the difference, which is 10 days. So we paid it, so retirement, you can save up to 165 days. The current rule is 205 days. We pay 25% of that variance. So we pay 10 of the 40 days when you leave.
And if the limit's gone and I get to 300 days?
No, so that if what Melissa's proposing is only the limit be removed for the accumulation, not for the payout. The payout would still remain the 10 days.
so really all it would affect is somebody who has a catastrophic illness or injury and they're out for over
Last time I
205
looked
days.
at this, there was 5 people in the county that were in this zone. It takes quite a bit of perfect attendance to kind of get here. Right.
So you're really talking about somebody that.
But if there was a catastrophic illness for somebody who had been here, you know, religiously and not abused their sick time and again, I want to just kind of, if you don't mind, Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Happ just said, to me, there is a fiscal impact by not increasing the days. So if you were to take the 205 days and remove the cap, say somebody has 300 days of sick time. While they're on sick time, you're paying them the salary that was already in the budget. If you leave it at 205 days and they're out for a catastrophic illness and they then tap disability, we're self-insured for disability. So that's a new cost that we're paying that wasn't budgeted for. So to me, there is a fiscal impact to not raising, if that makes any sense.
One pocket.
But the disability pays less than the sick day.
Right.
But it's taxed.
But how many times have you seen a department head come to you when somebody's out long-term disability and gets a temp in place? So now you're paying the temp and the disability. That's the impact I see on the business.
Especially if it's more than a couple months, right? That's when.
Yeah, if we're talking 200, 300 days,
Yeah.
they're probably, the department head's probably getting a temp to cover that long-term absence in a normal.
So the question is, there's something tickled my brain that there was some part of this time they could use to pay off sick time, pay towards, sick time.
Oh, the sick bank you're thinking of.
Sick bank, but isn't there something about help pay medical insurance?
No,
We
that's
don't
the
do
state
that.
does that.
No, we don't have it. We don't have it.
That's my next one.
We don't have that.
No,
The volume is bigger. They need to be written a little more,
Well, the bucket does get bigger, that's what.
right, but that delta stays the same.
The
It
payout
needs to be
delta.
well written.
The payout doesn't get bigger. the
Right.
bucket
If you could put that in there, I'm good with it.
The part about how much, those two things you referred to about how much the retirement system receives for credit and then how much the employee actually gets paid out are addressed in different parts of the handbook, which I would not be looking to change at all. So those are already in there.
The payout language would stay as is. The only thing that would change is the cap on the accrual.
Moved by Matt, seconded by Tim. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
No, I'm just kidding. Okay. The other issue that I wanted to bring up, that this has come up a lot lately, and I don't know if it's because of COVID or just economic times. We have employees, currently when employee leaves county service, they want to go work somewhere else. And then they decide that maybe the grass isn't greener on the other side. They want to come back. They're a really good employee. Their department head wants to hire them back. They're an asset. We have trained them. We've put money into them. Currently, when that employee comes back, they have to come back at the base pay, even if they were here for 10 years before they left. So it makes an employee, even though they want to come back here to work, it kind of puts a bad taste in their mouth because now all of a sudden they're making quite a bit less money in a lot of cases than they were when they left. I understand it was their choice to leave. But what I'd like to do there is if the employee returns to the department that they are working in at the same title that they were in, place them at the step in longevity that they had earned at the time of their termination, the time they left employment.
What?
Well,
What more can we give our employee? Let's give them.
The
we currently do something.
Yeah, we don't found that would encourage people to leave, test it out and come back.
There's no incentive.
Right, no, yeah, I don't think that would help retain.
I don't think it helps retain them. The one thing that it might do is help get an employee back here
It's already.
that's already trained, that we've already sent, to training, invested money in them. There have been resolutions passed in the past that have put employees on the step
Only
that they left at.
only an undersheriff, I think.
They had almost encouraged you, I'm gonna go try that,
Can-
just come back.
10, 12 years ago.
But they're not gonna gain anything by coming back. I'm not putting them ahead of where they were. I'm just
Also
saying the same.
But if I left and Tim didn't, and I come back at the same spot Tim was, Tim's gonna go, hey, I've been here the whole time.
You come back where you
You'd
left.
be- yeah,
I know,
you
but
would
he's
go
not
ahead.
exactly the same.
Yeah, but he would advance, you would not. So you'd
Sure.
still be, you'd be
No.
behind him. Because you become,
Right,
you
you got more
both
days.
leave at this point.
He'd almost every
He
year.
keeps advancing, you
At-
don't
at the
advance,
most.
so when you come back.
6 months and then it's off by a little bit.
Bob Hankey, Chairman.
I remember when this happened, and it's kind of because, well, someone in the administration was mad at somebody else, and they said, all right, we're gonna fix you, if you leave, we're gonna cut this off. I think that what we have is a pretty good employee, and, I can see the little bit of the vindictiveness here, saying, well, you bastard, you left, we're gonna ding you. But the fact of the matter is, we put a lot of money into these people, and you get somebody coming back, we got a situation that brought it to my mind. A person left for, about, maybe 3 months, something like that, because of a childcare issue. It was better the place she went, and said, no, it's not. I like where I'm working, I'm coming back. She came back, well-trained. She's doing stuff at a specialized level because of her training and things. And the person sitting right next to her who started while she was gone is making more money. They're both at the, at the bottom step. And I think we've got to invest in some of these people. If they're people that we don't want to go or that we don't want back, we haven't got to take them back. We take back the ones that are good. That we ought to be trying to encourage them to come back and stay here. I think that since COVID, with our employment policy, I think our employment in general around the world, at least around this state, we ought to be encouraging, good employees we get back. People are looking and trying to do a big economy. So we ought to get them back. We can get them back. I don't think we're encouraging people to leave at all.
Dana Hogan is next and then Dave.
Listen, did you mention a cap on days? When we can come back?
I said they'd have to come back within a year.
Okay. 30 days. That's water.
So I have another scenario that is realistic, especially in the past couple of years, what's happened. What if a employee doesn't leave because they're going to another job? So they left because they have healthcare issues or something else. They use all the time up. Now, they weren't leaving to test the water someplace else. Wouldn't it be a valuable employee to bring back? They didn't leave no job, they left because of personal situation. Should we take that in consideration also?
What happens if we have a whole bunch of people leave and then we get rid of a department head and we have 5 people want to come back? There's always that scenario. It's true.
So you mentioned the meeting, right?
We're not losing anything.
Right?
So I guess my question would be more, somebody said case by case basis.
Yeah.
And I think that fits where Tim was. If it's on case per case basis, I can't see we're gonna have 20 of these in a year.
We don't.
I think that one may be on case, so that it's not written in the policy, hey, you know what? I can go test the waters over there, because that sounds really good, and if I don't like it, I can just come back.
But there's no
no
we're gonna hire
guarantee.
you back.
No, but it gives them that built-in perception that, oh, they want me, so I'll test it. I
think that's a bad assumption.
Is it
Yeah.
like
Well, I
that?
think it is a bad assumption, but it might stop that from happening too.
Isn't it a case by case basis? You don't have to hire them back.
Right.
I'm saying if it's not enough.
Yeah, but I think case by case, you open yourself up for,
Well, in effect, you want
Why
to
you
because
say
you don't
I'm
have
better
to hire them
than
back.
right, we don't have to hire them back, that's easy.
That's case by case.
It's really only the employees that have them here, who trained them, if you find them to be good employees, we would like to have them back because it benefits us. It's just to help that situation.
Dana,
I think 1 year is too much, maybe 90 days. Plus, this exception should only be used once in their lifetime. Not do it again and again and again. Maybe just once, and you've got 30-day or a 90-day window to come back.
You're right.
I honestly would hate to do that, as far as tracking.
Yeah.
I would almost rather not do it at all, if we're gonna do a 90-day
Sue Claire,
and have the parameters in it.
Not at all.
Sue has the floor.
I think that we're putting in a lot of information. Probably really good at it. They probably, and just look at our employees, we have great employees. For the person doing the hiring, if they feel that this person is worth a hire back, they like them back, give them the discretion and the ability to do that. Right now, I mean, we've got, well, maybe 100 days, maybe three months, maybe, you know. And let them do their jobs. I think what you're suggesting is very timely.
Chairman,
I think there's a reason to cap the time at a certain point, because we're talking about training and this sort of thing, and I think that after a year, you get behind. And I think they're not as valuable at that point as you were, but, you know, I think, 90 days is pretty short. I like a year, but, I wouldn't go under 6 months, I don't think, if we cut it that.
And what type of job are they going back into? Whether it be dispatch or deputy sheriff or whatever it is, there is a change in knowledge that needs to be.
Well, and it, with some things like dispatch, it'd be quite a savings for the county, because you've got a 6 months training period or something like that, so to pop these guys back without incurring all those training costs.
So, just to recap what Bob said, was that, and Sue said, is they should be coming back in the same position they left, because if they're not in the same position or higher or lower,
It's that same thing.
the same title, that would be a great benefit to 911, it would be a great benefit to other places in the county, the sheriff's department and other parts. So it'd be a great benefit if we get those people back, so we have the training skills. With the sheriff's department, we've got what, how long's the academy?
6 months.
6 months, we have to pay the academy and everything, so for new people, and you lose all the experience that person has in maybe 10 or 15 years.
go ahead, Dan. 3 for 3 today, press your button.
broach this idea with department heads here? You must have meetings with department heads.
It's come to me, from department heads. It is
Yeah, but I mean, in a meeting with all department heads.
not with everyone. I haven't asked all of them. It's come to me over the last few years, at different times.
Well, the reason I'm asking, this is kind of a significant, policy change. And we've been at this since 10 o'clock this morning and we're all fried. I'm a little concerned about making a decision on this. I think this one might not be bad to let it bubble for one more round. And so it's kind of clear in our mind whether it's something we want to do or not. I can see ups and downs to it. And I don't know how I want to have to make a decision on it.
Would you like me to bring it back at a different time, or would you like it to go to personnel to be discussed?
Do you want to just pass it on to you or do you?
It's got to emanate from here. It's the policy, the handbook policy too.
I'm just voicing my opinion.
No motion.
No motion on the floor yet, Brian.
I really think case by case, I think that there's very few and there should be some risk in the person leaving. If you found them, they left. So that's the risk you take coming back. Do they really want you or don't they? I think case by case is perfect.
Which is handled by whether you get rehired or you don't.
Absolutely.
So are you,
That's up to
then-
the department.
Rob?
so are you then gonna have every person that wants to come back come to this committee or personnel committee and?
Yeah, we should flog them good for leaving. Yeah, go ahead.
That's the department trying to do it.
But that's what's
That was a
happening.
joke.
That's the department.
Matt, why don't you go
No,
like,
the department was
Because I'm not making a motion, so you move forward.
no, but I mean, you're browsing about the UTEP, but I want, now you're like 2-5.
No, no,
Okay,
no.
Al,
So in my humble, I know it's a good idea.
Al has the floor, guys.
My humble opinion, if it's a good idea, it will still be a good idea next month. It'll give you a month to chew on it. Give her a month to have a department head meeting and chew on it with them. And everybody can come back, having time to think about it, not be forced or not feel pressure to move it on. Give it a month to percolate, think about it. Let her talk to the department heads and next government ends. We'll look at it again. It's a good idea. It'll still be a good idea.
The next one will also be with the sick bank, and then we might say it's too much.
That's why it's drip, drip, drip.
No, you already killed my sick bank. That's not coming back.
If I could, I would ask that, you try and gather some statistics, how much times it's happened, once a year, 10 times a year, and the department should know.
Employees.
So right now-
I would say 5 or less times a year we have returned.
Yeah.
Right now,
And
they
DSS
leave,
probably.
they're probably not coming back. Right?
They leave for a reason. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes.
If they come back, the department head should come and make their case.
Or even a supervisor in the bigger departments, supervisor changes, policy changes, anything.
And how many departments have problems attracting personnel where it would really be a boon to that department?
The two departments that have recently talked to me about this are DSS and public safety, both of which invest a lot of time and training for their employees. They already have that ability. They received permission from the board several years ago to place them at the type of service that they have as a police officer or deputy sheriff. They already have that permission.
Okay, so something to think about in case our meeting is boring next month. Did you have anything else, Melissa? Let's take this way, guys. What was that?
Did you take everything? I had one more handbook.
Oh, yeah, that one should go there.
Yeah.
Well, Matt left, Dan's wandering.
And you need to sit in one of these chairs. Won't have a problem.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Give our attention to Melissa again.
Often when we're looking to fill positions, and people interview, they ask about our benefits and our vacation time that they receive when they get hired. Currently, we have our employees work 6 months before they accumulate 5 days of vacation time. There's a lot of employees, and I did speak to the personnel officer, and she has had people that it deters people because a lot of time they're coming from past employer where they have already received vacation time. It's hard to go from that to no vacation time when you have kids or whatever other things going on. So what I would like to do is put it in the handbook that at time of hire, you receive 10 days of vacation. Remove the part that says you receive another 5 at 6 months. Just have 10 days when you get hired. And then have also an asterisk after that says vacation is not paid out if the employee leaves county employment within 6 months of the date of hire. So that'll deter the people that want to come here. It's not a sign-on bonus. It's just vacation time to use throughout the year. Sometimes right now we hire people and they already have commitments to go camping or whatever in the summer and they have no vacation time. So you either can go without pay. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Jim?
Sounds like you added 5 more vacation days there.
I did. Yes. Because it's a whole year. Instead of giving it, we right now
Oh,
give
I
it
see.
5 days to use just for the second part of the year. I would just like to do 10 at the beginning of the year and do away with that.
So I've also seen incrementally where, you know, when you get hired, every month that you work, you get a day pay. You know, that's another way to look at
And
it.
that's how we do our sick time. You have to earn a day every month.
Right.
But that's not how we calculate the vacation time.
I'm like devil's advocate.
Like, it wasn't a lot of meetings.
No, Mike was waiting outside, like, what's going on?
Melissa, is that what the union is over in the highway department? Or do they earn it as they go?
They, the Teamsters, the
Yeah.
DPW workers, they get it after, oh my gosh, 6 months. I think that no, I don't think they get it for a year. And then they get 15 days. Where the other employees,
So they
Yeah,
get nothing
10
for a
days.
whole year?
they get nothing for a whole year, but then they get more at that first year than any other union or employee.
I
So
thought they
those
earned it by for every 40 hours they earn
No,
vacation time.
no,
That
they
sounds
get
like
15 days after the 1 year service.
Brian?
Well, how are they able to use a vacation day? So if I come to work one day, I can take the next 10 off under that.
If your department head approves your vacation time,
So this
you don't
is
get to
all
just
with
take time off.
Right, I was gonna say, because that
Right.
first month, you'd rather they were wearing something than just taking.
And
vacation.
honestly, if I interviewed you and you said, I have a camping trip next month with my family and I hired you in June, you know, that's probably something you talk about at your time of interview. It'd be nice to be able to pay you for that instead of saying, well, yeah, you can go, but I'm not, you know, you're gonna go without pay. That's kind of hard for a lot of families to take.
Well, it's COVID, we hired people and paid them and told them to stay home. So,
We protect our welfare.
I know.
Okay, does anybody have an opinion on this? Want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Moved by Dave, seconded by Tim. Any further discussion?
I think 10 days on day one is too much.
Still, department head approval.
It should be
whether or not they
maybe
get to
5
take it.
days on day one, and then after 6 months, you get the other 5.
I
Don't give them all,
agree.
give them all right now.
I agree with that. I'm not a.
No.
Either, yeah, but
Yeah,
most people are, unless you have some kind of trip out of the country, 2 weeks, right? Most people don't take 2 weeks vacation at once.
And you've already said it.
Good work.
5 days at the beginning, and then 6 months later, you get the other 5 days, instead of 5 days, instead of 10 days right now.
Right.
And that's, you already stopped me to make a motion?
I amend it.
You already said that this is, you know, this is kind of like, it encompasses around families, you know, so when they have a break coming up, you know, where, hey, you can stay home or you're going on vacation with your family, but you're not getting paid for it. I agree with that.
Because on my way, at 6 months, if you don't take 5 days right now, in the 6 months, you got 10 days.
Hey,
right
we're
now.
gonna make an
I
amendment.
second.
Okay, everybody understand the amendment?
Yes.
Voting on the amendment? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Carried.
So you'll see that again, it's the personnel.
Well, we
We
began
go back
voting.
to the original. Come trick me. As amended,
We'll do the personnel.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Move to personnel.
It went to personnel. Yeah, Matt said that.
So that'll go to personnel, there'll be additional,
I
under
think we
conversation.
started to make.
And if we want to do it countywide, then there'd have to be a motion to allow that benefit.
See, what we're talking about right now is not union,
Correct.
because unions have their own.
Right. These are non-union.
Yes.
I would like to clarify one thing if I could.
Oh,
The first item that I brought up, changing those dates in the employee handbook to match the CSEA. I think I just assumed that you wanted it to be going forward, but is there any interest in going back to the employees that have already been hired?
As of what day?
Right now we have tiers, so you want to equalize the tiers.
Really chose that.
So if you have an employee that was hired in 2010, and then in 2021, they went from CSEA to non-union. Do you want to help that group out? You want to have it affect them as well?
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm
Pretty small.
checking. Just want to make sure
Very small.
at the next anniversary date, we can make that adjustment.
Yeah.
Okay, just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Anything else come before government up?
Yes.
No, oh, shoot.
I have one other item.
Doesn't that have to be a motion, or did we already do it? You just clarified the previous.
I think she's clarified.
Yeah.
She said clarify.
Would you like a copy of the purchasing policy, or would you like me to just?
This is 10-second version.
There's no
Okay.
second version.
Do you want to pass it out?
Is this a simple one?
I think it,
Thing ever say that?
Okay.
We thought after an hour and a half meeting.
There you go.
That's all you got.
I got it.
Right here, now,
Are you looking for amendments or?
next one.
There's some changes made to the purchasing policy,
Okay,
which you will see, the highlighted parts or darkened areas are what we would like to add to just clean up some housekeeping items, I guess. But what I'm really looking to discuss is, I think everyone's familiar that we often use Sourcewell as one of the cooperatives that we use to purchase items from. They used to operate by lowest bid when they got their vendors that participated in Sourcewell. They now go by best value. Thank you. So currently, because the county, we don't allow best value to be considered, we can't use those cooperatives to purchase items. So it really narrows the amount of vendors that we can look at.
And the bigger problem is it's the lower priced one, but we can't even use them because
Can't.
that's value,
Correct.
and not done by price.
this is like DPS reading shortest route, you know, but you can't just drop down and say lowest price, best value or something.
Now,
Even
That's their problem, that's a mistake on their part.
yeah,
But because they've all gone in that direction.
right.
Yeah.
So even though the lowest price, we
Hold
can't-
on, Jacob's the
So,
floor, yeah.
so if we change this to best value, are we going back buying all our things from local dealerships instead of ones clear out in the other part of the state?
That's a whole different,
And purchasing on lowest bid and all that stuff, right?
I don't know that we want to get, that's a.
No, but I mean,
one
you're,
big preference.
if we prove it under the one, aren't we gonna be, we approve it because they're doing it, but we can't do it ourselves?
Well, I think we gotta incorporate somehow that we're still after the lowest bid.
And we are,
We,
and that's still in the policy.
but the problem is we can't take the lowest bid because they bid it by best value. You can't even go there.
Come on, isn't there another vendor that we can change to that does at lowest price?
There's just a lot less to pick from. So instead of
Yeah,
having
so it's cheaper to
35,
Sourcewell than to buy it from the other one that's the lowest vendor. That's why
Right.
this came.
You don't know that.
Yes, that's why it brought our.
Every time, it's always cheaper at Sourcewell's best value than it would be for lowest price for another vendor, every
no,
time.
no,
No, you
no.
don't have to.
Well, right, so don't tell me it isn't.
No, right now, we can't even look at it.
Right.
Not even an option for us.
You don't have to go with that.
No,
It's just
to
not,
allow for it. So we can at least look at
you
Right.
those
go with
vendors.
the lowest value unless you then use best value. But the default is lowest value unless you.
Can we get the
That's-
lowest price
Yes.
Yes.
from Sourcewell?
Yes. We can still do
That's
lowest
the first
bid.
question I have.
I mean, we're always.
So it was. and they
No,
said
you
no.
had an always, you had an always in there.
Right, we can't use them at all because of the way they did it. That's the problem.
And actually, this also pertains to DPW and their ability to utilize the New York State contract. Because they also, for the heavy equipment, are best value. They have adopted that, so we aren't able to use that. It seems like this is the direction that the state has gone in, and unless we buy in and go in that direction as well, it's just gonna limit the number of vendors.
So we- the glazed looks. We wanna have- Sure. Yep. So you guys all look kind of glazed, so why don't we review this policy and we'll bring this back to ops next month?
I make a motion, we forward the data after his review. Public study. Forward the next meeting.
I have just done that in the last 15 seconds, and I think we should. Melissa, the public works, that follows the state procurement about the number of written bids, and some of the bids at the $35,000.
Yes.
Okay, because best value cannot be for public works. Not allowed.
But Public Works isn't DPW, they're not the same.
Right, but any public works project, you're not allowed to use best value. So
That's
I
really
think,
what sewer district.
but in it, it kind of says what it's
Sewer
for.
and water, like,
It says, you know, commodities and professional services. All right, I say we do it. Done, now it's done.
But you're saying not for any public works projects.
It's not allowed. You're not allowed to use,
DPW is-
the state will not allow you to use
The
that.
GMLT.
we very rarely get public work. On the parts.
I
Building barns.
support Cassie's motion.
It was.
I didn't make a motion, I
You did, you
suggested.
made a motion.
It's
We
a new-
should table this to the next meeting, and I second.
Oh. Then you told Dana to review it, and he did.
No, I'm not satisfied with that short.
Any further discussion on tabling this till next month? Oh, no motion on? No. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Carried. Sorry, no.
But I don't see chairs in here anywhere. I'm okay with that.
You don't see one?
We had a chance to do it in half the time and we threw it away.
Gave us ample time, and we let it go.
If I go to the fire sale day, I would.
You were too early in the day to get fired to. Who's got this? Jimmy is.
A few minutes, get set up anyway.